Part 56. The Prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 551. Because he was afraid of spitting it out and disappointing Shen Shuwei. When I put it in my mouth, it was not as unpleasant as I expected. Instead, it tasted a little special, a little spicy, and very different from the tofu I usually eat. He chewed slowly and finished the stinky tofu. After seeing him eating, Shen Shuwei asked expectantly, "Husband, how do you feel about the taste?" Xiao Jinyan slowly opened his eyes and saw a pair of starry eyes full of expectation. "The taste is okay, a bit spicy." Shen Shuwei smiled when he heard the words, "It's a bit spicy, would you like to try something less spicy?" Shen Shuwei knew that Xiao Jinyan didn't like spicy food, so when Xiao Jinyan ate the piece, he dipped it in hot sauce. Xiao Jinyan nodded, "Yeah." Shen Shuwei picked a piece of stinky tofu that was not stained with hot sauce and handed it to Xiao Jin's mouth. Xiao Jinyan didn't close his eyes this time, but continued to pinch his nose, fearing that he would be nauseated by the bad smell. He opened his mouth and took a bite of the stinky tofu. It wasn't spicy, but it didn't taste as spicy as it was. Shen Shu smiled and asked, "Do you think it tastes spicy?" Xiao Jinyan nodded, "Yes, it's not spicy enough. I'll dip it in some hot sauce for you, you try it." Shen Shuwei said, dipped the remaining half piece of stinky tofu in a little hot sauce and handed it to Xiao Jinyan's mouth again. He ate it into his mouth, and it got a little smell of hot sauce. "The tofu tastes good." "Qin Xiao, pay the bill," Shen Shuwei said and walked out of the corner holding Xiao Jinyan's hand. Qin Xiao walked over quickly, took out a broken piece of silver from his money bag and handed it to the stall owner. "No need to look for it." After saying that, he strode after him. The stall owner saw the broken silver. After selling stinky tofu for so long, this was the first time that the price of 12 pieces of tofu was higher than the price of several hundred pieces of tofu. Shen Shuwei took Xiao Jinyan to a shop selling sweet soup and ordered 2 portions of mung bean sweet soup. Although it is already the beginning of autumn, the weather is still hot. Drink some sweet mung bean soup to relieve the spiciness and heat. Shen Shuwei had just finished eating the stinky tofu. She picked up a bowl of sweet mung bean soup and handed it to Xiao Jinyan. "Husband, drink some sweet soup." On the way, Xiao Jinyan ate 2 more pieces of stinky tofu. He had never eaten spicy food, and now he wanted to drink water because of the spicy food. Sweet soup would be the best thing to drink. Shen Shuwei picked up another bowl of mung bean sweet soup, put it to his mouth and took 2 sips. The sweetness was just right and the taste was good. After Xiao Jinyan drank the sweet soup, the spicy feeling in his mouth disappeared. The mung bean soup was cold and a bit sweet. After drinking the sweet soup, Shen Shuwei took Xiao Jinyan's hand and continued walking forward. There are a lot of people at night, including men, women, and children. A group of children were laughing and playing, shuttled among the crowd, and the laughter was continuous. Shen Shuwei approached Xiao Jinyan and asked in a low voice, "Husband, what do you think of the commercial street in Nanzhao Kingdom?" "Not, but a street." Xiao Jinyan said, "Nanzhao is the most powerful country with strong financial resources. Naturally, the country is peaceful and the people are safe, and the road is prosperous." Shen Shuwei whispered in Xiao Jinyan's ear, "Daxia will definitely surpass Nanzhao." Xiao Jinyan was stunned for a moment. Shen Shuwei said proudly, "Because Daxia will have a husband in the future, I believe in his ability." Only then did Xiao Jinyan understand the meaning of her words. He chuckled, "Aren't you afraid that others will say that your husband is too conceited?" Shen Shuwei didn't care, "I don't tell others, I only tell my husband." Xiao Jinyan laughed out loud, "You can only say this in front of me." Shen Shu nodded slightly and pulled Xiao Jinyan to continue shopping. On the busy street, the man in green dress followed the woman in purple dress in front of him hesitantly. "Princess, What if we sneak out like this and are discovered by the emperor? Yaenyu said without looking back, if you don't tell me, if I don't tell you, how will my father know? The maid was still a little worried after hearing this, but princess, the emperor has said that he will choose a consort in the near future to make you feel more at ease. When it came to choosing a consort, Yaenyu said with some displeasure, the consort wants to live with me for the rest of his life, so of course he has to choose it himself. How can the one they choose suit me? The maidservant had followed the princess for so many years, so she still knew her temper well. She immediately lowered her head and remained silent. There were too many people on this street. Shen Shuwei and Xiao Jinyan were originally holding hands, but because they were holding hands casually, they could easily be rushed away. Xiao Jinyan noticed it and raised his head to look at Shen Shuwei. The two were separated by the crowd, as if they were separated by a river. He ignored the crowds coming and going and tried his best to grab Shen Shuwei's hand, but he was rushed away again as soon as he touched it. Shen Shuwei also reached out to Xiao Jinyan. When she saw someone walking between the two of them, she almost grabbed his hand. She has now seen the plot in the TV series. The hero and heroine are obviously very close, but they are always blocked by passers-by and unable to hold each other's hands. Those passers-by didn't look at them at all, there were 2 or 3 of them without interruption, and there were so many people that it was really difficult to hold hands. Yaenyu was also forced to move forward while being squeezed by passers-by, both men and women. She looked at the person who met her with disgust. When she saw that it was a tall and thick man, she was even more disgusted. Just when she was about to open her mouth to reprimand, she saw an incomparably handsome face and forgot to reprimand him for a moment. Those twinkling phoenix eyes are so familiar. Yaenyu stopped and stared at the narrow phoenix eyes for a long time. Xiao Jinyan couldn't hold Shen Shuwei's hand because of the passers-by. Finally, he was forced to use force and pushed away those who were blocking him with his internal strength, and then he grabbed her hand. Shen Shuwei held Xiao Jinyan's hand tightly and looked at the people coming and going. There are so many people. Isn't today a holiday? No matter how busy the streets are, there won't be so many people unless it's a festival. I don't know. Xiao Jinyan didn't know much about Nanzhao Kingdom in his memory, let alone their festivals. He looked around and found a stall not far away. He took her hand and walked towards the stall. Shen Shuwei was not short but not tall either. All she saw in the crowd were dark heads. She could only blindly follow Xiao Jinyan's footsteps. Yaenyu's eyes were fixed on the slender figure. When she saw the man leave, her legs couldn't help but follow him. Shen Shuwei followed Xiao Jinyan to the stall and sat down. As soon as she sat down, she found that it was selling wontons. Xiao Jinyan retracted his gaze and looked at Shen Shuwei. Want wontons? Shen Shuwei nodded vigorously, I'm just hungry. Xiao Jinyan turned his head and looked at the boss, 2 bowls of wontons, 1 bowl with spicy and coriander. Okay, please wait a moment, sir. The boss picked up the wontons and poured them into the pot with ease. Shen Shuwei couldn't help laughing when listening to Xiao Jinyan's words. Xiao Jinyan retracted his gaze and saw the beautiful arc of Shen Shuwei's mouth. What are you laughing at? Shen Shu smiled and said, I remember that when we went to the stall to eat wontons, I also said the same thing to the boss. Xiao Jinyan laughed softly. Is this probably tacit understanding? When he was in the Xin Miao tribe, Xiao Jinyan heard Shen Shuwei talk about tacit understanding. She said that our tacit understanding dropped from 60 to 0, and 60 was the passing line. Shen Shuwei smiled slightly, it's tacit understanding. Xiao Jinyan couldn't help asking, what is the tacit understanding now? He thought that the tacit understanding was at least 80. Shen Shuwei lowered her eyes and calculated carefully, it's already 40. Xiao Jinyan. Half less than expected. Why so little? Shen Shuwei explained seriously, it's a little less now, because you don't remember a lot, and when you remember everything, it will be 65. Xiao Jinyan couldn't help asking again, why is it only 65 when the couple is harmonious and they have both sons and daughters? Shen Shuwei had explained it before, but Xiao Jinyan had forgotten it, so he had to explain it again. Do you still think 65 is too little now? Xiao Jinyan said, according to your calculation, 65 is indeed not low. At this time, the boss brought 2 bowls of steaming wontons and said with a smile, Sir, the wontons are ready, please enjoy. Shen Shuwei smelled it and found it very fragrant. He couldn't wait to pick up the spoon and stir it, and blew it with his mouth to speed up the cooling. Xiao Jinyan held the spoon, but his eyes looked at Shen Shuwei. Seeing her blowing the coolness, his cheeks bulged like meat buns, and he couldn't help laughing. Yanyu kept staring at the figure, but the figure was getting farther and farther away from her. The crowd was too big, and she couldn't squeeze out at all, so she was forced to follow the crowd. She was very anxious, but there was nothing she could do. After eating wontons, Shen Shuwei and Xiao Jinyan walked around for a while. They had been on the road these days and were exhausted. Although they slept for an hour, it was far from enough. So after walking around for a while, Shen Shuwei yawned and said, Husband, let's go back. Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and looked at Shen Shuwei, and found that she was sleepy. Maybe she was tired, so he nodded, okay. Shen Shuwei held Xiao Jinyan's arm, and felt that her legs were a little weak and she couldn't move. She raised her head and looked at Xiao Jinyan, Husband, can you carry me? Okay. Xiao Jinyan knelt down in front of her without saying a word. Good afternoon. Please support with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 552. Shen Shuwei looked at the man who squatted down in front of her without saying a word, and was stunned for a while. From the moment she decided to become husband and wife with Xiao Jinyan until now, Xiao Jinyan hugged her countless times, but never carried her away once. In the past few years together, we may not have had that opportunity. Now she mentioned it casually, and he agreed without saying a word. Instead, she was a little surprised, probably because he hadn't remembered it yet. Seeing that there was no movement behind him for a long time, Xiao Jinyan turned around and looked at Shen Shuwei with a confused voice, What's wrong? It's nothing. Shen Shuwei lay on him, stretched out his arms around his neck, and let him hold his legs. Shen Shuwei was already light in weight, so Xiao Jinyan could easily carry her on his back, and it was very stable and would not cause her any discomfort. Shen Shuwei rested her chin on his shoulder and whispered into his ear, Husband, we have come to Nanzhao Kingdom by ourselves, what are you going to do next? Xiao Jinyan said, I don't know what to do. I'll rest for 2 days and then make plans in 2 days. Shen Shuwei nodded obediently when he heard the words, listen to your husband. It was a very simple 4 words, but Xiao Jinyan felt that it sounded particularly pleasant, and it was so well behaved that people liked it very much. After walking for a while, Xiao Jinyan found that Shen Shuwei was asleep, breathing evenly, and the hand that was holding his neck loosened. But after walking around for a while, I fell asleep from exhaustion. Yanyu finally squeezed out of the crowd and ran to the stall with her skirt in hand. When she ran over, she looked around the stalls and didn't see the handsome man. Princess, princess, I finally found you. I scared you to death. The maid looked around and thought the princess had been kidnapped by bad guys. She was so scared that her legs were weak, but luckily she found her. Yanyu didn't pay attention to the maid Shuangnu. She looked around. She clearly saw him sitting here just now, but why was he missing? Shuangnu looked at the princess's actions in confusion. Princess, what are you looking for? I just saw a young master. I have never seen such a handsome man before. Yanyu had seen many young talents, but the man she just saw shocked her at a glance. Just when Yanyu wanted to continue looking, Shuangnu reminded, Princess, we should go back. If the emperor finds out, We will definitely be punished. Yaenyu paused in her footsteps, thinking of her father's fierce appearance, and no matter how unwilling she was, she had no choice but to go back first. Let's go back. Shuangnu secretly breathed a sigh of relief and followed with small steps. Asterisk. Back at the inn, Xiao Jinyan carried Shen Shuwei up to the second floor. As soon as he came up, he met Wu Tan, who was walking down. When away from home, Xiao Jinyan's identity as the Prince of Daxia needs to be kept secret. Wu Tan did not greet him as a prince, but put his hands together and greeted him in the usual way of Buddhism. Xiao Jinyan looked at Wu Tan and saw that they had come together after all, and Wu Tan was also leading the way. He was familiar with Nanzhao Kingdom, so he took the initiative to ask, "Where are you going, little Master Wu Tan?" Wu Tan said, "I'm going to see an old friend." Xiao Jinyan heard that Shen Shuwei and Wu Tan talked about it. Nanzhao country was Wu Tan's hometown. Since it was Wu Tan's hometown, it was natural that he knew people there, so there was nothing wrong with going to see his old friend. Xiao Jinyan didn't ask any more questions and went up to the second floor with Shen Shuwei on his back. Wu Tan raised his head and looked at Xiao Jinyan, and saw Shen Shuwei lying on Xiao Jinyan's shoulder, sleeping soundly. It wasn't until the person was far away that Wu Tan slowly withdrew his gaze and continued down the stairs. After Xiao Jinyan settled Shen Shuwei, he brought Qin Xiao in. Shen Shuwei said that Qin Xiao was his personal bodyguard and one of the most trustworthy people. Although he didn't remember Qin Xiao, he was used to doing things along the way, and Qin Xiao was very efficient in doing things. Qin Xiao walked in from the outside, took a few steps forward, lowered his eyebrows and nodded, "Master, do you have something to tell me?" Xiao Jinyan asked, "Have I ever mentioned anything about Nanzhao Kingdom to you before I lost my memory?" Qin Xiao said, "Back to my master, before you ask someone to go to Nanzhao Kingdom to investigate about Fengwu." Xiao Jinyan asked, "Who is Fengwu? My subordinates don't know." The result of the investigation at that time was that Fengwu was from Nanzhao Kingdom, and then disappeared out of thin air, Qin Xiao said. Xiao Jinyan asked, "What do you mean?" Qin Xiao reiterated the general content of what he found at that time. After hearing this, Xiao Jinyan pondered for a long time before coming to the conclusion, "So, Fengwu is most likely from Nanzhao, and I also know him." Qin Xiao nodded, "It's the master." Xiao Jinyan didn't know who Fengwu was, so why did he want to check her out in the first place? "It can't be a confidant that I met before?" Thinking of Shen Shuwei, he immediately threw this possibility out of his mind. If Shen Shuwei knew about it, would she run away directly? Then continue to investigate things about me? "I obey my orders." Qin Xiao took the order and retreated. After Qin Xiao left, Xiao Jinyan stood up and came to the bedside. He lowered his eyes and looked at Shen Shuwei, who was still sleeping soundly. He wondered how much she knew about his past affairs. He didn't dare to ask rashly, for fear of asking the wrong question and causing unnecessary misunderstandings. After watching for a long time, he started to take off his clothes and then got on the bed. He found that the longer he stayed with Shen Shuwei, the vaguer his memory about Lin Xian became, and his mind became emptier and a little confused. Often when he has a headache, many images will flash through his mind, but he can't catch them. I wonder if it's because his sleeping point was tapped? It's just that sometimes, he feels very comfortable with Shen Shuwei, so comfortable that he doesn't want to force himself to think about some things, as if he doesn't want to think about them subconsciously. After Wu Tan was able to come out, he walked to the lakeside, where a boat was docked. When he came, someone came out to greet him immediately. After Wu Tan slowly stepped onto the boat slowly left the shore. In the boat, there was only an oil lamp lit, and the light was so dim that people's faces could not be seen clearly. After Wu Tan entered, he sat in the boat until the boat docked on the island. Asterisk. During the 2 days of rest, Shen Shuwei slept most of the time. She would go out for a walk and eat delicious food at night because it was a bit hot during the day and she was too lazy to go out. Xiao Jinyan would go out for a walk when he had nothing to do. When he came back and saw that she was still asleep, he took out the oil paper bag from his arms, slowly opened it, and waved his hand to fan out the fragrance inside. Shen Shuwei, who was originally asleep, twitched her nose twice, then slowly opened her eyes and saw the oil paper bag in Xiao Jinyan's hand. She smelled it and said, "It smells so good." Xiao Jinyan now has a hold on Shen Shuwei. As long as he brings delicious food, he can almost wake Shen Shuwei up and let the greed drive away the sleepiness. "Wash up first, it's still warm." Okay, Shen Shuwei stretched and found that her limbs were a little weak. If it weren't for the delicious food, she would have to sleep for another hour before she stopped. After washing up, Shen Shuwei was too lazy to change her clothes, so she ran over and took the oil paper bag from Xiao Jinyan's hand. She found that it was a cake, probably with meat filling, because it smelled so good. Xiao Jinyan saw that she was very satisfied when she ate, and found that she was really easy to feed and easy to satisfy. Qin Xiao spent 2 days to find nothing, which made Xiao Jinyan a little confused. Since she was from Nanzhao country, how could he not find any clues? Qin Xiao suddenly said, "Master, you were a hostage in Nanzhao before. Could you have any connection with the palace? I'll go to the palace to take a look." Xiao Jinyan said, "It's not appropriate to rush into the palace. Don't act rashly when you are not sure." Qin Xiao lowered his head, "I was reckless." Xiao Jinyan took the teacup and put it to his lips and took a sip. Suddenly he thought of Wu Tan. As a Nanzhao, would he know something? Thinking of this, he stood up and opened the door and walked out. Wu Tan's guest room was nearby. He walked there for a while. He raised his hand and knocked on the door. The door opened from the inside. Wu Tan saw Xiao Jinyan and asked, "Mr. Xiao, is there something?" Xiao Jinyan said, "I want to talk to you about something." Wu Tan took 2 steps back and said, "Come in." Okay, when Xiao Jinyan walked in, he saw a scripture on the table and a faint smell of sandalwood in the room. Wu Tan waited for him to come in and closed the door. At the table, Wu Tan picked up the teapot and poured a cup of tea for Xiao Jinyan. "Mr. Xiao, please sit down." Xiao Jinyan retracted his gaze and sat down at the table. Wu Tan picked up the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea, then put it down. Xiao Jinyan looked up at Wu Tan, who always looked indifferent and cold, as if nothing could disturb him, and nothing could make him show a different expression. Thinking that he came to him to ask something, he didn't beat around the bush and asked, "I heard from Shen Shuwei that your hometown is in Nanzhao country. Are you a native of Nanzhao country?" Wu Tan nodded, "Yes, Mr. Xiao, do you think there is a problem?" Xiao Jinyan asked again, "Since you are a native of Nanzhao country, why do you want to become a monk in Daxia? When did you decide to become a monk?" Wu Tan said lightly, "Master said that Buddha saves those who are destined to be saved, and so does becoming a monk. Why do you ask me these private matters, Mr. Xiao?" Xiao Jinyan didn't hide it, "I just want to know how much you care about Nanzhao country." "Understand?" Wuyutan said, "What does Mr. Xiao want to ask me?" Xiao Jinyan looked up at Wuyutan and didn't beat around the bush, "Do you know Feng Wu?" Wuyutan didn't answer but asked, "Have you found this person in Nanzhao?" Xiao Jinyan shook his head, "No, I haven't found this person after a long time." Wuyutan said, "Since you can't find it, why do you come to ask me?" Xiao Jinyan said, "It's because I don't have it, so I want to ask you. As a native of Nanzhao, you should know this person, right?" Wuyutan was silent for a long time after hearing this. At this time, there was a knock on the door. "I'll open the door." Wuyutan stood up and walked to the door. He saw the waiter brought 2 bowls of porridge and 2 bowls of side dishes. After he took them, he closed the door again. Wooten came over, put the lunch on the table, and then sat down. When he looked up, he found Xiao Jinyan still looking at him. He said calmly, "I know how, but what if I don't know?" Xiao Jinyan asked, "I want to know who Feng Guiu is. What is his relationship with me?" Wooten asked back, "Do you think this is important?" Xiao Jinyan seemed to have thought of something and said in surprise, "You know Feng Guiu, right? Good night. Please support me with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 553. Chapter 553. I can have such a powerful father, ways to restore memory. Wuten's voice was still light. I am now a monk, and the past has nothing to do with me. Xiao Jinyan frowned. Wuten's tone of knowing but not saying was more annoying than perfunctory. But he soon regained his composure. "You know Wang Jingyuan, Wang Jingyuan knows me, but he never asked you before. You should know me too, right? When I was a hostage in Nanzhao Kingdom. It doesn't matter to me whether I know you or not," Wuten said lightly, and began to prepare for the meal. Xiao Jinyan watched Wuten slowly put the bowls and chopsticks. He glanced at the food in front of him, 2 bowls of porridge, 2 dishes, every day. "I guess our relationship should have been very bad before, so it doesn't matter to you whether we knew each other or not. Anyway, I don't remember it anymore. Feng Guiu should be very important to you, right?" Xiao Jinyan guessed. The phoenix eyes kept staring at him, as if to see through him. "If Master Xiao thinks so, then that's it," Wu Tan said, and then he lowered his head and began to eat lunch. He moved lightly, without making any sound, and there was a hint of nobility in his bones. Xiao Jinyan stared at Wu Tan for a while, knowing that he was not interested, and did not waste any more words and time, and got up and left. Qin Xiao placed the lunch on the dining table one by one, and put a steamed fish on the table next to it. Sichuan was originally lying there sleeping, but when he smelled the fish, he immediately pricked up his ears and opened his eyes wide, until Qin Xiao put the fish on the table, and immediately woke up. Shen Shuwei looked at the food in front of him, and did not see Xiao Jinyan, so he asked Qin Xiao, "Where is the prince?" Before Qin Xiao could answer, Xiao Jinyan walked in from outside. Shen Shuwei saw it and said, "Husband, where have you been?" Xiao Jinyan sat down at the dining table. "I went to talk to Wu Tan for a while." Along the way, Shen Shuwei found that Xiao Jinyan didn't like Wu Tan very much, and he actually took the initiative to talk to him, just like the sun rising from the west. "What did you talk about? Isn't Wu Tan from Nanzhao?" "I asked him about something, but he kept silent." Xiao Jinyan didn't mention Feng Guiu, fearing that she would think too much. Shen Shuwei picked up some dishes and put them in Xiao Jinyan's bowl, saying, "Maybe he doesn't know either." Xiao Jinyan was not angry at first, but after hearing what Shen Shuwei said, he was a little angry. "You only know how to defend him." Shen Shuwei picked up another piece of meat and put it in his bowl. "Didn't I say maybe? Besides, he is a monk, and he may not know much." Xiao Jinyan seemed to understand one thing after hearing this: monks don't tell lies. Wu Tan kept silent, maybe because he can't lie. This possibility is very high. Seeing that he was still thinking, Shen Shuwei reminded him gently, "Husband, eat first. It's better to think of a solution after you are full." Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and looked at the rice bowl in front of him. After a while, it was already filled with vegetables picked up by Shen Shuwei, almost all of which were meat. Shen Shuwei had just put a piece of meat into her mouth when she saw Xiao Jinyan staring at the meat in the bowl. She smiled and explained, "Eating meat will make you grow taller and your mood will also be better." Xiao Jinyan chuckled, "No wonder you like to eat meat so much. Of course Shen Shuwei ate another piece of meat after she finished speaking. Later, she realized that Xiao Jinyan seemed to have something else in his words. Xiao Jinyan picked up the chopsticks and put the meat into his mouth, chewing carelessly. Today was the third day in Nanzhao country. He had gained nothing and could not stay in Nanzhao country forever. Shen Shuwei was also anxious to return to Daxia. Shen Shuwei ate several pieces of meat, and as if she thought of something, she looked up at Xiao Jinyan. Husband, did you lose your memory in Nanzhao kingdom? How about we regain our memory first? Xiao Jinyan also agreed with Shen Shuwei's idea, because he didn't know what to do next. The suggestion is good, but he thought of Wu Tan, who was stubborn and would definitely not help. I heard that there was a very powerful national teacher in Nanzhao kingdom 2 years ago. Maybe he has a way. Shen Shuwei had heard gossip before, saying that the reason why Nanzhao kingdom was so strong and prosperous was because there was a powerful national teacher. She just listened to it at the time and didn't take it seriously. It was not certain whether it was true or false. Xiao Jinyan had also heard some related rumors, but there were too many rumors in the market, so she didn't know whether it was true or not. Qin Xiao, go check the matter about the national teacher of Nanzhao kingdom. I obey your order. Qin Xiao took the order and left. After lunch, Xiao Jinyan planned to take Shen Shuwei out for a walk. Before leaving, Shen Shuwei saw Suichuan staring at the bowl with grievance, thinking that she had indeed neglected it during this period, so she picked it up and followed Xiao Jinyan out of the inn. At this time of day, there were few people on the street. Shen Shuwei thought that Xiao Jinyan was taking her to eat delicious food. Although she had just finished lunch, it did not prevent her from eating some ancient snacks. When they stood in a tea house full of people, her little face was full of doubts. Why did they come to the tea house? This did not fit Xiao Jinyan's temperament. Xiao Jinyan said, "Let's go in." Shen Shuwei raised her head in doubt. "Husband, what are we doing in the tea house?" Xiao Jinyan held her hand and said softly, "You will know when you come in." Shen Shuwei followed Xiao Jinyan in with doubts, and he found a more remote corner to sit down. Ask the waiter to serve a pot of good tea and 2 plates of snacks. Without snacks, Shen Shuwei probably couldn't sit still. There was a platform in the middle of the tea house, and on the platform there was a storyteller who was over 50 years old. At this time, the storyteller was telling rumors about the national teacher. Shen Shuwei couldn't understand what the storyteller here said. He spoke quickly and in a dialect. She picked up a piece of pastry, glanced at Xiao Jinyan, and found that he was listening very seriously. She glanced at the storyteller who was talking with gusto, and asked in a low voice, "Husband, can you understand?" Xiao Jinyan nodded, "I can understand a little bit." Shen Chu took a bite of the cake and looked at the storyteller on the stage again. "I don't understand. What is he talking about?" Xiao Jinyan, rumors about the imperial master. Shen Shuwei suddenly realized that when watching a TV series, a storyteller joked about some interesting rumors. No wonder Xiao Jinyan came to the tea house. She did not disturb Xiao Jinyan, but pricked up her ears and listened carefully, hoping to understand something. After hearing about a cup of tea, she gave up and looked down at the pastry in her hand. It was better to just eat the pastry honestly. After walking out of the tea house, Shen Shuwei couldn't help but ask, "Husband, tell me the rumors about the imperial master." Xiao Jinyan said, "The storyteller today is telling a rumor from 20 years ago, saying that the imperial master was extremely handsome, but he fell in love with an ugly girl. Everyone envied the ugly girl for being loved by the imperial master." After hearing this, Shen Shuwei looked in disbelief. A top handsome guy fell in love with an ugly girl at first sight. To marry Su. Xiao Jinyan heard words that she didn't understand, and she didn't know why she said something that she didn't understand. Rumors are mixed between true and false. As a face controller, Shen Shuwei was really curious, because so far, Xiao Jinyan was the most handsome man she had ever seen, with noble temperament and perfect figure. Is the imperial master in the capital city? I also want to see how handsome the top handsome guy is in the rumors. Is he more handsome than your husband? Xiao Jinyan glanced at Shen Chuwei and said, at that age, he can be your father. Shen Chu smiled and said, it is my blessing to have such an awesome and handsome father. Those are not thighs, they are golden legs. Xiao Jinyan, say anything. Shen Chuwei didn't notice Xiao Jinyan's face gradually darkening, and continued, my husband doesn't know something. The older a man is, the more attractive he is. Otherwise, how can you say that a man is 41 flowers? Xiao Jinyan's face turned dark. Anyone who heard his wife praising other men would be unhappy. Say it again. Shen Chuwei felt a chill running down her spine. She raised her head to look at Xiao Jinyan and saw that his face was dark. She immediately changed her words, my husband is becoming more and more attractive as a man now. Xiao Jinyan's displeasure softened a lot after hearing this, do you still want to see it? Shen Chu shook his head slightly and said something against his will, I don't want to anymore. Only then did Xiao Jinyan look away with satisfaction, and continued walking back with her in hand. Shen Chuwei looked back at the tea house. She was really curious about how handsome the imperial master was who could fall in love with an ugly girl at first sight. Asterisk. Qin Xiao spent 2 days researching some things about the imperial master. Master, the imperial preceptor is not in the capital city now. Moreover, I heard that the imperial preceptor has rarely come to the capital city in recent years. It is very difficult for even the emperor to see the imperial preceptor. Xiao Jinyan asked, do you know the reason? The reason is ominous, but there are many rumors in the market. It is said that the imperial master has differences with the emperor of Nanzhao. There are also rumors that the imperial master is not capable. There are also rumors that the imperial master has returned to the mountain after being tired of playing for too long. What is even more outrageous is that it is said that the imperial master is lovelorn. Xiao Jinyan knew as soon as he heard that most of it was imaginary, and there might be very few parts that were true. Shen Chuwei was feeding the snow dumplings and dried fish. Hearing Qin Xiao's report, he was a little curious, I thought Mr. Lu was amazing enough, but I didn't expect that the imperial master was even more powerful than Mr. Lu. Qin Xiao said, I heard that the imperial master knows magic, and there are even rumors that he can determine life and death. Anyway, the rumors in the market are very exaggerated. Shen Chuwei looked at Xiao Jinyan with bright eyes, then he is so powerful, can he help my husband recover his memory? Xiao Jinyan thought for a moment and said, maybe. Shen Chuwei couldn't wait to hear the words, then let's go find him and recover our memory and go home as soon as possible. Xiao Jinyan understood Shen Chuwei's mood, and he chuckled, it's very difficult for even the emperor to see the imperial master, let alone us. Shen Chuwei naturally understood. How will you know if you don't try? Xiao Jinyan pondered for a moment and said, be more prepared and let's go try it. Shen Chuwei nodded vigorously, okay. When Xiao Jinyan decided to give it a try, he started to prepare. In order to know more about the imperial master, Xiao Jinyan spent almost the entire day outside. Shen Chuwei woke up, and when she didn't see Xiao Jinyan, she hugged the snowball and planned to go out for a walk. In fact, she wanted to eat stinky tofu. It would be afternoon and there were still not many people on the street. Good afternoon. Please support with monthly votes and recommendation votes. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 554. Shen Chuwei walked towards the corner where stinky tofu was sold while holding Swichuan. From a distance, she saw a crowd of people gathered in front of the notice board, all of them sighing. With such a big scene, I thought someone was missing, but it turned out to be a bird. You have never seen the world. The pets in the palace are precious, more important than your life. If they are lost, they must be found. Shen Shuwei squeezed into the crowd with curiosity and saw the imperial edict posted on it. The imperial edict said that a colorful feather was lost in the palace and a reward was offered for finding it. On the right side was a portrait of a colorful feather. Its head looked a bit like a parrot, but its tail looked a bit like a phoenix, and its body looked like a pheasant. With this portrait that looked like nothing, it would be a miracle if it could be found. Shen Shuwei was just here to watch the fun. After watching the fun, she took Swichuan to buy stinky tofu to eat. The stall selling stinky tofu was still in the original place. It might be because it was a bit smelly, so the location was a bit off. When Shen Shuwei came, the stall owner recognized her at a glance. The main reason was that there were really too few girls as beautiful as Shen Shuwei who loved to eat stinky tofu. In addition, Shen Shuwei was sweet and pretty, and spoke nicely, so the stall owner remembered her at first sight. "Miss, do you want stinky tofu?" the stall owner greeted enthusiastically. Shen Shuwei smelled it and said with a smile, 10 pieces of stinky tofu. Okay, the stall owner took out the oil paper bag, put the stinky tofu just out of the pot, sprinkled it with hot sauce and coriander, and then handed it to her happily. Shen Shuwei looked down at the snowball in her arms. It was a bit inconvenient to eat with the snowball in her arms. The snowball seemed to see it and climbed onto her shoulder neatly and continued to lie down. She then freed her hands to take out the purse. As soon as she put her hand in, she heard the stall owner say with a smile, "No need to pay. Your family's followers paid a lot of silver 2 days ago." Okay, then Shen Shuwei put the purse back into her sleeve pocket, took the stinky tofu from the stall owner, poked a piece of stinky tofu with a bamboo stick and put it into her mouth to eat. The stinky tofu just out of the pot was particularly fragrant. Shen Shuwei continued to stroll while eating to see if there were any other delicacies. At this moment, a colorful bird was circling above her head. Swichuan looked up at the colorful bird above her head, propped up her body and called out to the bird, "Meow." The call was a bit provocative. Shen Shuwei was eating stinky tofu and didn't notice a bird circling above her head. She looked up at Swichuan and kindly reminded, "Be careful not to fall down." Swichuan turned her head to look at Shen Shuwei, as if to remind her, "Meow." However, Shen Shuwei, who was always paying attention to the stinky tofu, didn't hear Swichuan's reminder. She was eating stinky tofu. Suddenly feeling a little thirsty, she walked towards the sweet soup stall. The colorful bird flapped its wings, circled a few times, and followed Shen Shuwei. Swichuan propped up her body, staring at the bird with her azure eyes, as if looking for an opportunity to catch the bird. Shen Shuwei bought a bowl of sweet soup and drank a few sips to quench her thirst. She looked at the mung beans in the bowl and suddenly wanted to eat green mood, mung bean flavored popsicles. It's a pity that ice cubes are only available in the palace, otherwise I would have bought a few mung bean popsicles to quench my cravings. The colorful bird was originally hovering in the sky, and it suddenly flapped its wings and dropped its hovering height. The guard saw Kiu hovering not far away and shouted, "Look, Kiu is there, hurry over." Dozens of guards rushed to the direction of Kiu after hearing this. Then the chief guard ordered again, "Go back and report that Kiu has been found." "I obey your order." The little guard turned around and ran back. People on the street consciously made way for him. Shen Shuwei drank the sweet soup in one breath, and then continued to eat stinky tofu. After walking for a while, she saw a group of guards in armor coming towards her. She subconsciously retreated to the side of the street to make way for them. After retreating to a safe area, Shen Shuwei continued to eat stinky tofu with her head down. She saw dozens of black boots suddenly appeared in front of her. She raised her head in confusion and found a group of guards standing in front of her. Shen Shuwei's eyes flashed with doubt. She had been in Nanzhao Kingdom for a few days. It seemed that she had not committed any crime. Maybe it was a misunderstanding? Shen Shuwei tried to go to the right. The bird above her head flapped its wings and followed behind. When the guards saw Kai move, they immediately moved their positions, fearing that Kai would run away again and they would not be able to report. Shen Shuwei suddenly stopped, and a strange scene happened. The guards also stopped. She tried several times. When she moved, the guards also moved. It was clearly coming towards her. Shen Shuwei stood there and did not dare to act rashly, because she didn't know why the other party wanted to block her. If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. Respond to changes with constancy. This stalemate lasted for a long time. The bird flew lower and lower, and the guard's side followed Kaiu. The bird flapped its wings and finally landed on Shen Shuwei's shoulder. The guard's eyes were fixed on Kaiu. But in Shen Shuwei's eyes, they were just staring at her. She thought carefully about what happened in Nanzhao country in the past few days, and found that she had been sleeping in the inn most of the time, and there was no chance to cause trouble, and she was not a troublemaker. Sichuan saw the bird flying down, stretched out his claws to scratch it, so Shen Shuwei did not realize that it was the bird, not Sichuan's claws, that was grabbing her shoulder. The chief guard saw Kaiu and waved his hand, "Surround it, don't let it run away." The guard slowly formed a circle and surrounded Shen Shuwei. Shen Shuwei. What on earth do they want to do? Looking at the guards who were getting closer, Shen Shuwei felt that he would not be able to escape if he didn't run. She turned around and whispered to Sichuan, "Come down and run by yourself. You are so fat, you will hold us back." Sichuan. Shen Shu whispered, "Hurry up, you won't be able to run if you don't run." At this moment, a crisp bird call startled Shen Shuwei. She turned her head and looked over her left shoulder, and met a small black eye. Where did the bird come from? The captain of the guard finally reminded him, "Girl, you stand still, otherwise Kai will fly away if you scare her." Shen Shuwei suddenly understood that they were here for the bird, not to catch her. She suddenly remembered the imperial list on the bulletin board. Is this the Kai that was lost in the palace? She stared at the bird a few more times. There were 3 spiritual whiskers on its head, glowing with royal blue light in the sun. The head looks a bit like a parrot, and its body is small and exquisite. It doesn't look like a pheasant's body at all. I don't know how the artist drew the pheasant's body. At this moment, Shen Shuwei became much calmer. As long as it was not directed at her, there was no need to worry. She hugged Yuki-dan and comforted it, telling it not to move and not to eat iroha. The guards didn't dare to move because they were afraid that if they did, Kai would fly away. After a stalemate for a stick of incense, the captain of the guard found Kai standing on Shen Shuwei's shoulders with no intention of leaving, and they did not dare to step forward rashly. After thinking about it, the captain of the guard said, "Girl, you send Kai into the palace, and I will reward you with silver." Shen Shuwei looked at the silly bird and asked doubtfully, "How should I give it away?" The captain of the guard thought for a while and said, "Take a look. If Kai doesn't fly away, it means it likes you, and you can send Kai into the palace." Shen Shuwei had seen the imperial list, and being able to find it on the imperial list meant that this silly bird was very precious. "I don't want a silver reward, can you grant me a request?" The captain of the guard nodded and agreed without even thinking, "No problem, all 10 requests are acceptable, as long as Kai can be sent to the palace." "Then let me try." Shen Shu glanced at the stupid bird on her shoulder. "If you can, just stand still." She held the snowball and walked forward pretending to be nonchalant. After walking about a few hundred steps, silly bird stood on his shoulder with no intention of leaving. Shen Shu turned slightly to look at the captain of the guard who had been following behind and said, "You guys lead the way." "Okay." The captain of the guard directed some of the guards to follow and some to lead the way. Shen Shuwei followed the guards all the way to the palace. There were guards leading the way, so it went smoothly when entering. The imperial palace of Nanzao Kingdom is majestic, and the garden design inside shows that a lot of thought was put into it. After walking such a long way, Kao stood on Shen Shui's shoulder, which made the captain of the guard secretly relieved, as long as Kao was sent back to Wu Palace. The palace was too big, and Shen Shui's legs were sore from walking. Before she reached the designated place, she couldn't help but ask, "How long do we have to walk?" The captain of the guard said, "There is still half a way." Shen Shui. At this moment, a high-pitched voice came, "The emperor has arrived." The guards all knelt down. Shen Shui stood still, mainly because he was afraid that if he squatted down, the stupid bird would fly away, which would mean that he ran away in vain. Following the eunuch's loud shouts, a tall figure walked over surrounded by a group of eunuchs and maids. The man was wearing a bright yellow dragon robe and a golden crown on his head, and he had the aura of an emperor in his face. It was the first time Shen Shui saw the emperor of Nanzao Kingdom. He was about 50 years old and slightly put on weight. Although he was old, his facial features still had a calm and handsome look. The captain of the guard took a few steps forward and reported, "Your Majesty, Kao has been found." When Yahouding learned that Kao had been found, he rushed over and saw a girl wearing pink clothes standing in the courtyard, with Kao standing on her shoulders. When he saw the girl's face, he was shocked for a long time. Kao has always been raised in Wu Palace and has never been so close to anyone else, except Xiaju. You will see that the girl's face is very similar to Xiaju's face, and the pet she is holding in her arms is the same as it was 10 years ago. Could it be that Xiaoju is back after disappearing? Shen Shui looked at the emperor of Nanzao in front of him in confusion, with tears streaming down his face and a look of surprise. Isn't it just a bird? Those who didn't know thought he was losing his children. Yahouding took a few steps forward and looked her up and down. He hadn't seen her in 10 years. She had grown up a lot, but she was no different from when she was a child. She loved to wear pink clothes and carried snowballs with her wherever she went. His voice couldn't contain the excitement. "Xiaju, are you back?" A trace of doubt flashed in Shen Shui's eyes. "How do you know my nickname?" Hearing this, Yahouding was even more certain that she was Xiaoju. He was surprised and happy. "It's too hot outside, let's go in first." Good night, Spicy. Please support me with monthly votes and recommendation votes. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 555. Chapter 555. She did something wicked and suddenly became a princess. Shen Shui was taken into the palace by the emperor of Nanzao Kingdom with a confused look on her face. The palace was indeed much cooler than outside. Yahouding ordered the maid beside her, "Prepare some exquisite cakes." The little maid responded and turned to prepare. After a while, she brought 3 plates of exquisite cakes and placed them in front of Shen Shui. Shen Shui was still confused. She secretly glanced at the emperor of Nanzao Kingdom, and her hand couldn't help but pinch the solace of Swichuan's feet. Aren't emperors always serious? Why is the emperor of Nanzao Kingdom different? Instead, she is a bit amiable. Yahouding sat opposite Shen Shui, looking at her eyes full of spirit, which had not changed much since she was a child. Seeing her sitting still, he said softly, "Xiaju, eat some cakes first." Okay. Shen Shui lowered her eyes and looked at the imperial cakes in front of her. Naturally, they were more delicate than those outside. She licked her lips. The emperor asked her to eat, so she naturally had to cooperate. She picked up a piece of yellow cake and put it into her mouth and took a bite. The taste was fine and slightly sweet. Xiao Jinyan liked this taste. Yahouding's wise eyes kept staring at her. Seeing her eating cakes, Xiaju loved to eat since she was a child, and this has never changed. "Xiaju, where have you been for so long? Even I don't recognize you." Shen Shui looked at Yahouding in confusion. blinking her big beautiful eyes twice. I guessed right, you are the Emperor of Nanzao, right? Yahouding's eyes flashed with doubt, always feeling that Feng Wu in front of him was a little strange. He continued to ask, did something happen to you during your disappearance? Shen Shuwei was eating pastries, feeling that the emperor in front of him was a little weird, not having the emperor's airs when they first met, and asking some strange questions. I don't understand what you are talking about. Yahouding asked again, aren't you Xiaju? Shen Shuwei replied subconsciously, yes, what's wrong? Yahouding looked at her for a while and came to a conclusion, that is, amnesia. Come on, please ask the imperial doctor to come. Shen Shuwei. Ask the imperial doctor for what? The eunuch guarding the door immediately trotted to the imperial hospital. After a while, an old imperial physician who was over 50 years old was invited to come in respectfully with a medicine box. Your Majesty. Yahouding ordered, imperial physician, take a look at Xiaju. Yes, the imperial physician stepped forward a few steps, put the medicine box on the table, opened the medicine box, took out the diagnosis pad and placed it in front of Shen Shuwei, motioning her to stretch out her wrist. Shen Shuwei didn't know what they wanted to do, so she naturally wouldn't let them take her pulse. She hugged Sichuan tightly, I'm not sick. Yahouding thought she was afraid, and she became timid as she grew up. He soothed her gently, Xiaju, don't be afraid, the imperial physician is just taking the pulse. Shen Shuwei still shook her head, I don't take the pulse. The imperial physician looked at the emperor in embarrassment. Yahouding saw that Xiaju insisted and didn't embarrass her. He waved to the imperial physician and motioned him to leave. The imperial physician lowered his head to pack up the medicine box and left. Shen Shuwei looked at the unfamiliar palace and felt that it would be better for her to leave the palace first. I have sent Kai back. She turned her head to look at the silly bird on her shoulder. If she didn't get off, what would she do if she pooped later? She had seen birds poop on other people's heads and heard that pooping on the head would bring bad luck. Yahouding thought that she had been missing for so many years and suddenly appeared. She had become much more timid. She was probably scared by the bad guys. He was afraid of scaring Xiaju, so his tone slowed down. It doesn't matter if you don't remember. You will always remember it in the future. Shen Shuwei finally heard that the emperor thought she didn't remember. Wait, she suddenly opened her eyes wide. Could the Xiaju he was talking about be Feng Wu? She had seen the portrait of Feng Wu when she was a child. She looked a bit similar to her, and Feng Wu's nickname was Xiaju. So, the emperor mistook her for Feng Wu. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that this possibility was more likely. Yahouding soothed her gently, just settle down and treat this place as your home. Shen Shuwei stood up suddenly, I can't live here, you recognized the wrong person. Don't be afraid. Yahouding stood up to soothe her and let her sit down again. You don't even remember, how do you know I recognized the wrong person? You can stay here boldly. I will write a letter to the National Master and ask the National Master to come and see you. When Shen Shuwei wanted to explain that she was not Feng Wu, she immediately shut up when she heard the National Master. They were worried about where to find the National Master. If they could see the National Master by staying here, it seemed that it would be okay. It's just that if they stay here, they have to pretend to be Feng Wu, which is a bit unethical. Shen Shuwei was actually very entangled in her heart, but she thought that Xiao Jinyan could recover his memory. After Xiao Jinyan's memory is recovered, she will explain that she is not Feng Wu, or sneak away. It's not impossible. Then she will be unethical once. Yahouding was the emperor who was busy with many things and government affairs. He ordered, come here, take the princess back to Wu Palace to rest. Shen Shuwei heard the word princess. Could it be that Feng Wu was the emperor's daughter? But the emperor's surname was Ye, so he took his mother's surname? Were things so avant-garde in ancient times? She secretly glanced at Yahouding, wanting to see if they looked alike. Two little palace maids walked in from outside the palace and led Shen Shuwei out. Shen Shuwei followed behind with a guilty conscience. Yahouding looked at Xiaoju's back as she left. He thought he would never see her again after she disappeared for so many years, but he didn't expect to see her again. With a smile in his eyes, he went to the imperial study to handle government affairs. Shen Shuwei followed the palace maid with Xuetuan in her arms, looking around at the Nanzhao palace. After walking for a long time, her already sore legs became even weaker. The palace maid lowered her eyebrows and nodded, "Princess, Sansu Palace has arrived." Colorful feather flapped her wings and flew up from her shoulders, then flew in slowly. Shen Chu slightly raised his head and looked at the plaque above his head, which had the words Wu Palace written on it. Even the name of the palace was Wu, so Feng Wu was the princess of Nanzhao Kingdom? She followed the palace maid in and saw two peach trees planted in the front yard. There was a swing set under the tree, which looked to be quite old. Various flowers are planted around the peach tree. At a glance, the flowers are clustered in clusters, and it is spring at a glance. Going forward is an arch bridge. Under the arch bridge is a clearly visible lake, with several goldfish chasing them in the lake. On the right side of the arch bridge is the lotus pond, and the lake leads to the lotus pond. Next to the lotus pond is a rockery, and next to the rockery is a hexagonal pavilion. Next to the hexagonal pavilion is a bamboo forest. It will be very cool in the pavilion in summer. Just the front yard taking up such a large space is enough to show how big Sanssouci Palace is. Shen Shuwei followed the palace maid to the dormitory, and heard the palace maid say, "Someone will clean this place every day. The princess can rest peacefully. If you need anything, just ask the slaves." Shen Chu nodded guiltily, "Okay." The two palace maids slowly exited. After the palace maid left, Shen Shuwei put down the snowball. When she saw the soft couch, she couldn't wait to lie down on it. She was exhausted from walking so much. She glanced at the snowball and saw it standing next to her, so she closed her eyes with peace of mind and planned to take a nap. Xuetuan raised his head and looked at Shen Shuwei. Seeing that she was sleeping, he turned to look at the window. There was a birdcage hanging there, and Kai was drinking water in the birdcage. Yuki-dan stared at Iroha for a long time, then suddenly ran, jumped to the window, and then jumped from the window to the birdcage, but the birdcage was too high, and it fell quickly as soon as its front paws touched the body. The birdcage shook very hard because of Xuetuan's claws. Colorful feather flapped its wings, flew out of the birdcage, and suddenly swooped towards the snowball. When the snowball was about to jump, it suddenly increased in height. Xuetuan jumped up, jumped into the air, and looked up at Kai hovering above his head, as if unwilling to do so. After flapping back and forth for a while, Xuetuan felt a little tired, so he stopped looking after Kai and walked elegantly to lie down at Shen Shuwei's feet. After flapping her wings for a long time, Iroha felt that she had had enough teasing, so she returned to the cage to rest. Asterisk. Xiao Jinyan came back from outside and bought Shen Shuwei's favorite pastries and stinky tofu. He opened the door and walked in. He went straight to the bed and found that she was not on the bed. Xiaoju. He glanced at the guest room. The guest room in the inn was not big and he could scan it at a glance. There was no figure of Shen Shuwei in the room, and no snowballs were seen, which made him start to panic. He hurriedly ran out of the guest room and knocked on Wu Tan's door first. There was an urgent knock on the door. Wu Tan opened the door and saw Xiao Jinyan, and asked, "Is there something wrong, Mr. Xiao?" Xiao Jinyan looked inside but did not see Shen Shuwei. He asked, "Shen Shuwei is gone. Have you seen her?" Wu Tan's eyes flashed with worry. "The poor monk has been meditating in the room and hasn't seen her. Could she have gone out to play?" Xiao Jinyan knew that Shen Shuwei was not a child anymore and it was normal for her to go out. However, she just thought that it would be unsafe for her, a weak girl who was unfamiliar with the place, to go out alone. He didn't answer and turned to leave. Xiao Jinyan came all the way to the counter. "Shopkeeper, did you see my wife going out?" Xiao Jinyan's voice was urgent. The shopkeeper saw too many people every day and experienced a lot. Seeing how anxious he was, he guessed that his wife was missing. Because peers are more conspicuous, the shopkeeper can easily remember them. "In the afternoon, I saw her going out with the cat in her arms, but she never came back." Xiao Jinyan asked, "Does the shopkeeper know where she went?" Shen Chuwei carried the cat out, and the shopkeeper paid special attention to it. The shopkeeper pointed to the right, "Go that way." "Thank you, shopkeeper." Xiao Jinyan thanked him and chased him out. Looking at the streets with people coming and going, Shen Chuwei was greedy and the place he would go to was the food stall. He strode towards the food stall. Wu Tan ran out of the inn, and when he saw Xiao Jinyan running away, he quickly caught up with him. Shen Chuwei was woken up. When he opened his eyes, he found that it was dark. "How long have I been sleeping?" She hurriedly got up from the soft couch and walked out of the bedroom quickly. As soon as he walked out, two palace maids came to greet him and said, "What are your orders, princess?" Shen Chuwei said without thinking, "I want to leave the palace." It was already dark now, and Xiao Jinyan would definitely be anxious if he found that she was not in the inn. "Good afternoon, babies. Please support me with monthly votes and recommendation votes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 556. Chapter 556 is this father's love entering the palace to find a wife. This. The palace maids looked at each other, a little embarrassed. Shen Chuwei saw the hesitation of the palace ladies, thinking that they could only be little slaves and could not do anything, so he would not embarrass them any more. "I want to see the emperor, you take me there." The palace maid then nodded and said, "My slave, I obey." Swichuan also ran out at this time. Shen Chu slightly bent down to pick it up and followed behind the palace maid. Before leaving the Wu palace, Ye Haoding arrived. The maids all saluted, "Your Majesty." Ye Haoding saw Feng Wu and said with a smile, "Xiaju, are you hungry? Let's have a meal with me." Shen Chuwei stepped forward to bless her body. Ye Haoding saw it and hurriedly supported her. "When you see Gu in the future, you don't need to salute to Gu." Shen Chuwei looked at the emperor in confusion. He was so good, so he didn't need to salute. The rules of Nanzhao Kingdom are indeed different from those of Daxia. "Your Majesty, I want to go out to the palace." Although she was curious about whether the emperor was Feng Wu's father, the other party didn't mention it, so she just called him the emperor. Ye Haoding asked, "What are you doing out of the palace? Do you need to buy anything? Tell Gu, and Gu will send someone out to buy it." Shen Chu was stunned for a moment. Xiao Jinyan was the prince of Daxia. He had stayed in Nanzhao for 8 years and was 16 years old when he left. He was easily recognized by them. What if Xiao Jinyan's identity is exposed when he says he's looking for someone? But without leaving the palace, Xiao Jinyan would not know her current situation and would definitely be anxious. Seeing that she didn't speak, Ye Haoding thought she was embarrassed. "Xiaju, if you have anything to say, it's okay to just say it." Shen Chu said slightly, "I want to eat stinky tofu." Ye Haoding had never heard of stinky tofu. He suspected that he had heard it wrong. "What is stinky tofu?" Shen Chu said slightly, "It's food." Ye Haoding never thought that stinky tofu is for eating. "Can I still eat it after it's smelly? I'll prepare some other delicacies for you, okay?" Shen Chuwei had already eaten stinky tofu today, so he wasn't that greedy. It was just an excuse. She arched her eyebrows and said, I listen to the emperor. Yahouding laughed out loud when he heard this. Okay, I'll let someone prepare it now. Shen Shuwei listened to the emperor's hearty laughter, and she suddenly thought that her father often treated Susu like this. Although Susu was a girl, her father loved her very much. So she began to suspect that Yahouding was Fenghui's father. Even though she is fake, should she still call him daddy? No, call me father? In the end of the struggle, Shen Shuwei didn't scream anything because she couldn't scream. Yahouding was very interested in chatting now. He said, Xiaju, you are now 19 years old this year. She has become a girl. She was cute and popular when she was a child. Now she is more beautiful and her mouth is still as sweet. As Shen Shuwei is so old, this is probably the sentence I hear most often, to be liked, you have a sweet mouth. Thank you for the compliment. Yahouding smiled and asked, have you suffered a lot outside these years? Without waiting for Shen Shuwei's reply, Yahouding said again, it's good to be back. No one dares to bully you now, so you can rest assured. Shen Shuwei has lived in an orphanage since she was a child, and has never felt her father's love. She only got along with Yahouding for a short time, and she actually felt his father's love. Is she too lacking in love? What she lacks is father's love. You can't be my father, right? Yahouding laughed out loud after hearing this. Shen Shuwei looked embarrassed, wasn't he? Then why are you so nice to Fenghui? Yahouding smiled and said, you really don't remember. Shen Shuwei didn't answer, she's a fake and doesn't know anything, okay. Yahouding comforted him in a gentle voice, it doesn't matter if you don't remember. You will remember it in the future. Shen Chu nodded guiltily, and when Xiao Jinyan remembered it, she left. As for where Fenghui really is, she doesn't know. At this time, the eunuch brought dinner to the table and then left. Shen Shuwei had been hungry for a long time, and now she was even hungrier when she smelled the delicious food. She was just worried that Xiao Jinyan would worry about her, so in order not to worry Xiao Jinyan, she decided to eat her fill first. Only when you are full can you have the strength to think of a solution. Yahouding said, try these meals, they are quite to your taste. Then let me try it. Shen Shuwei sat down at the table. The palace maid had already served the rice for her. She picked up the chopsticks, picked up the meat and put it into her mouth to eat. She found that it was very appetizing. Yahouding sat across from her and looked at her, thinking of her eating habits when she was a child. You are still the same as when you were a child, putting meat first when putting vegetables. You like eating meat so much, and I haven't seen you gain weight. Shen Chu slightly raised his head and looked at Yahouding, feeling somewhat fortunate that his preferences were somewhat similar to Fenghui's. Because the meat is delicious. Yahouding laughed again when he heard this, yes, the meat is delicious. After Shen Shuwei ate 4 bowls of rice, Yahouding asked her if she was full. She suddenly thought of Xiao Jinyan. He said, why girls have such big appetites? I'm stuffed. Yahouding nodded, that's good. Go to bed early tonight and let the prince take you to familiarize yourself with the palace again tomorrow. Shen Shuwei has been in Nanzhao Kingdom for a few days, and she still doesn't know who the crown prince of Nanzhao Kingdom is, but it doesn't matter who she is, since she is a fake and amnesiac. After Yahouding left, the palace maid came up and asked, Princess, are you ready to take a hot bath now? Shen Chu nodded slightly, okay. Slave, let me get ready. The palace maid exited. After Shen Shuwei saw that the maids had all gone out, she took out a pen and paper from the space, wrote a few words and folded them up. Seeing Swichuan, who was full and satisfied, she called out, Swichuan. Swichuan was lying down with a comfortable look on his face. Hearing his master's call, he got up neatly and ran over with his short legs, meow. Take this to Xiao Jinyan, okay. Although the road is a bit far, I believe in your ability and you will definitely be able to do it, Shen Shuwei said as she put the note into the small purse, and then hung the purse around Switchuan's neck, tying it neither tight nor loose, so that it would not make it uncomfortable, nor would it be lost halfway. Switchuan is a cat that would never walk if held, but letting it run so far, it's a cat's life. However, it will never refuse the work arranged by its master. Shen Shuwei patted Switchuan's head, and Switchuan obediently slipped out in the night. Switchuan's nose is more sensitive than a dog's, so there is no need to worry that it can't find Xiao Jinyan. The maid came in to report, "Princess, the hot water is ready." "Oh, it's here." Shen Shuwei suddenly remembered that she didn't bring any clothes. What should she wear for bathing? Just when Shen Shuwei was worried, several maids came over with clothes. "Princess, please choose clothes." Shen Shuwei looked at the clothes in the maid's hands: red, yellow, green, blue, purple, pink. At first she was curious about how clothes were prepared in advance, but then she thought, there are so many clothes in the palace, they must have been prepared. She picked pink, and then came behind the screen and saw fresh petals in the bathtub. If you didn't know, you would think she would sleep with you later. Two maids, one on the left and one on the right, lowered their eyebrows and nodded. "Princess, I will help you undress." Except Chengzi, Shen Shuwei was not used to being served by anyone close to her. "No need, you can leave." "Yes," the maids responded and left. When Shen Shuwei sat in the bathtub, her body was wrapped in warm water, and it was indeed very comfortable. At this time, on the street, Xiao Jinyan ran through the streets and alleys, but he didn't expect Shen Shuwei's figure. He was so anxious that he almost went crazy. If Shen Shuwei got into trouble because of coming to Nanzhao Kingdom, he would never forgive himself in his life. It was already dark now, and every household had turned on the lights. It was dark. "Xiaju, will she go back to the inn?" Xiao Jinyan thought that Shen Shuwei might go back to the inn, and ran towards the inn without stopping. When he ran to the inn, it was already half an hour later. He couldn't wait to go upstairs, opened the door, looked at the still empty room, and fell into unprecedented fear. "I didn't feel so scared when my legs were injured and I was blind." Wu Tan just ran up and saw Xiao Jinyan walking towards him in a daze. He asked, "Haven't you found her yet?" Xiao Jinyan shook his head, "No." At this moment, Xiao Jinyan had no time to care about Wu Tan, let alone observe his subtle expressions. He just wanted to find Shen Shuwei quickly. Wu Tan frowned upon hearing this, thought for a moment, then turned around and ran downstairs again. Xiao Jinyan walked out of the inn and saw Qin Xiao coming back, so he asked, "Did you find it?" Qin Xiao shook his head, "No." Xiao Jinyan looked at the unfamiliar place. Where could Shen Shuwei go? Just as Xiao Jinyan was blaming himself, he saw a snow-white figure running towards him, and when he looked closely, he found that it was Switchuan. As soon as he squatted down, Switchuan jumped into his arms. "Meow!" Switchuan called anxiously. Xiao Jinyan saw hope in Switchuan's eyes, and when he was about to let Switchuan take him to find Shen Shuwei, he found a small purse hanging around its neck. Thinking that it might be worn by Shen Shuwei, he couldn't wait to take it off. When he took out the note inside, his heartbeat was a little unstable. He opened the note and saw the words on it, and he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Xiaju was fine. A few brief words let him know that Shen Shuwei's current situation was safe, but it didn't say what she was doing in the palace. Xiao Jinyan couldn't feel at ease. He asked Qin Xiao to find a set of night clothes, and then asked Switchuan to take him to find Shen Shuwei. Switchuan was tired like a dog at this time. He didn't even drink a sip of water and started running again. Xiao Jinyan obviously didn't care about Switchuan's mood at this time. He just wanted to see Xiaju at this moment to make sure if she was really safe. So, Switchuan didn't even catch his breath and started running desperately again. Breaking into the palace at night is not a trivial matter. Xiao Jinyan is very cautious. Fortunately, with Switchuan leading the way, he successfully avoided all the guards. When Xiao Jinyan sneaked into the bedroom of Wu Palace, even if the light was extremely dim, he could tell that the person on the bed was Shen Shuwei. He walked over slowly and sat down beside the bed. Shen Shuwei was originally waiting for Sichuan to bring a reply letter, but she couldn't bear it for too long and fell asleep. When she was sleeping in a daze, it seemed that someone came in. She forced herself to squint her eyes and saw a person sitting at the head of the bed, almost scaring her away. After the shock, she sobered up a little and saw a hand reaching out. She instinctively reached out to grab the hand, and with the other hand, she took out a silver needle from the space. Just as she was about to pierce the vital part, she heard a familiar voice in the dark night. "Xiaju, it's me. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 557. Chapter 557. I want her to leave, it turns out she is so powerful. Xiao Jinyan held her wrist as he spoke. This was his instinctive reaction when encountering danger. With a flash of silver light, he guessed that she had a silver needle in her hand. If he was slower, he might know which acupuncture point she would prick. This was also the first time he knew that Shen Shuwei's vigilance and counter-attack abilities were not weak. Shen Shu was slightly stunned when he suddenly heard Xiao Jinyan's voice. Who would have thought that Xiao Jinyan would break into the palace at night? She put away the silver needle in her hand and asked, "Jinyan, why are you here?" Xiao Jinyan said, "Don't worry, come in and have a look." Shen Shuwei was a little worried. "Didn't I say I'm safe now? This is the palace, what if I'm discovered?" Xiao Jinyan didn't care about this at all when he came. Seeing that she was really safe, he felt relieved. "Why did you come to the palace?" "It was an accident." Shen Shuwei told Xiao Jinyan what happened today. Xiao Jinyan's eyes were filled with surprise. "So the emperor of Nanzhao thought you were Fengwu because they look alike?" Shen Shuwei was not sure. It should be like this. If they don't look alike, there probably won't be such a misunderstanding. Xiao Jinyan asked again, "Do you know Fengwu?" Shen Shu nodded slightly. "I've heard of it. I've also seen a portrait of her when she was a child. She does look a bit similar to me." Xiao Jinyan never mentioned Fengwu in front of Shen Shuwei because he was afraid that she would misunderstand. But she knew it and had seen her portrait. If he had known earlier, he should have asked directly. "Where have you seen her portrait? Do you know why I want to check her?" Even if Xiao Jinyan didn't remember it now, Shen Shuwei didn't say that he secretly opened the secret compartment and took a peek. "Didn't you keep the portrait for yourself? I was curious about your relationship at first, but now I can guess that you are childhood sweethearts. Because you don't remember, and you have a collection of portraits and a piece of jade, you must have a good relationship, so you want to check her out." Xiao Jinyan asked again, "What jade?" "Well." Shen Shu spoke quickly and told Xiao Jinyan about the jade. Wasn't it equivalent to telling Xiao Jinyan that he secretly opened the secret compartment? "You'll find out when you return to Daxia." Xiao Jinyan couldn't remember what happened in the past, so he could only look at those things back in Daxia. "Then why do you want to stay?" "When I walked all the way just now, I found that this palace is very big, even for a princess, it is very luxurious." Shen Shuwei leaned close to Xiao Jinyan's ear and said, "You can see the Imperial Master if you stay." Xiao Jinyan looked at her doubtfully. "The Imperial Master is in the capital city." Shen Shu shook his head slightly. "No, but the Emperor has already written to the Imperial Preceptor, and he is expected to come to the capital city soon." Xiao Jinyan checked and found out that the Imperial Master was not in the capital city. Now that he heard what she said, he knew that the information was correct. If they find out that you are a fake, it would be too dangerous to convict you of deceiving the Emperor. Shen Shuwei explained, "I told him that he recognized the wrong person, but the Emperor insisted that I was Fengwu. I originally wanted to persist, but he said that the national master was coming. Such a good opportunity cannot be missed. He admitted his mistake first, and I pushed him halfway. Shen Shuwei hugged his neck and whispered, "If it doesn't work, let's sneak away then." Xiao Jinyan knocked on his forehead and said, "You are quite courageous. It is not as simple as you think. This is Nanzhao Kingdom. Do you think you can escape if you want?" Shen Shuwei paused after hearing the words. At that time, he didn't think about how to escape. He only thought about meeting the Imperial Master. Now that he thought about it, it was really difficult to escape. Then let's meet the Imperial Master first and see if he can talk well. If he is too fierce and can't talk, I will take the initiative to say that they have the wrong person. That should be okay. Xiao Jinyan knew that she wanted to stay because of him, and wanted to see the Imperial Preceptor as soon as possible so that the Imperial Preceptor could help him restore his memory. "I don't trust you to stay in the palace." Shen Chu smiled and said, "It's not my first time staying in the palace. Don't worry, I can protect myself." Xiao Jinyan thought about her experience of counterattacking and becoming the crown princess, which was indeed amazing. Shen Shuwei continued to comfort him, "Jinyan, I'm really fine. You don't have to worry about me." Xiao Jinyan was mainly worried about her safety, and he was not around. If anything happened, no one would help her. "Then do you know who Feng Wu is from Yehaoding?" Shen Chu shook his head slightly. "I guess Feng Wu is Yehaoding's daughter, because he treats Feng Wu so well. When I asked him if he was my father, he didn't deny or admit it, but smiled very happily. What do you think?" Xiao Jinyan felt strange when he heard this. Judging from the palace, he knew that Yehaoding treated Feng Wu very well. Even the name of the palace was the word Wu. Shen Shuwei added, "If you think of the memories in Nanzhao Kingdom, you should know who Feng Wu is." Xiao Jinyan stared at Shen Shuwei for a long time under the dim light and discovered a problem. "You don't seem to care at all." Shen Shuwei looked confused. "What do I care about?" Xiao Jinyan said, "I have Feng Wu's portrait and a piece of jade. Do you think it's normal?" Shen Shuwei couldn't help but roll his eyes. "I also want to know why you keep carrying that portrait and what kind of jade you have. You don't remember it yourself." "I want to know, but I have no way of knowing." "Do I have to beat you and scold you, Emil?" Xiao Jinyan. "It seems to make sense." Shen Shuwei suddenly took the initiative to kiss the lips that were very close. "Jinyan, we are going to start a long-distance relationship again." When Xiao Jinyan reacted, she had already moved away. "What do you mean?" Shen Shuwei explained, "I am inside the palace, and you are outside the palace. We are separated by red bricks, green tiles, and the palace wall. Isn't it just a long-distance relationship?" Xiao Jinyan. This is the first time I heard the term long-distance relationship, but this explanation still makes some sense. Shen Shuwei felt a little sleepy now, so she patted his shoulder and said, "It's already very late. You can go back. If necessary, I will ask Sichuan to deliver a message to you." Xiao Jinyan also knew that this was the palace and he couldn't stay for long, but he still felt a little uneasy about having her alone in the palace. After Shen Shuwei's repeated persuasion, Xiao Jinyan left the palace at night, with Snow Tuan leading the way. Before leaving, Xiao Jinyan looked at Sichuan. He reached out and rubbed its head. Sichuan was really different from ordinary cats. It was very smart. "You are an adult now. You should be smarter in the palace and don't let others bully her. Do you understand?" Sichuan looked confused. Xiao Jinyan found that he had been led astray by Shen Shuwei, and said this to a cat, "Go back." After hearing this, Xue Tuan jumped off the wall. Xiao Jinyan also took advantage of the night to return to the inn. "Bia Palace. I didn't expect you to come to me. Have you figured it out?" The moment Ye Yuchen saw Wu Tan, he sat up from his chair excitedly, and his voice was equally excited. As long as you are willing to come back, you will still have that position at your fingertips. Wu Tan said, you are overthinking. This poor monk is here to ask for your help. Yuchen's smile froze on his face, and the joy just now was gone. What's the matter, tell me. Wu Tan said, help the poor monk find someone. Yuchen knew that Wu Tan came with 2 men and 1 woman, but he did not pay attention to the other 3 people. Who are you looking for? Wu Tan didn't have a portrait of Shen Chuwei in his hand, so he could only briefly describe her features. The girl who came with me, he gestured at her height, she's probably this good, she's very beautiful, and she's holding a baby in her arms. White cat. Although Yuchen was dissatisfied, he still nodded and agreed, okay, I'll send someone to look for him tomorrow. Wu Tan couldn't help but raise his voice a bit, no, let's go find him now. Yuchen looked at Wu Tan suspiciously. He had always looked like he didn't care about anything until the reunion. Suddenly he was so excited, which made him a little curious. What's her relationship with you? Wu Tan said, friend, she has been missing for 3 hours and must be found now. Yu chuckled, when did you like making friends so much? Why didn't I know? Wu Tan's face suddenly turned cold, why are you asking so many questions? Yuchen knew that he was angry as soon as he heard this tone, so he stopped asking and called the guard at the door in. After giving a few careful instructions, he asked him to take someone to find him. Then he ordered his subordinates to take people to the land of fireworks to find people. When a beautiful woman goes missing, she is most likely abducted, and a brothel is the most likely suspect. After Yuchen finished his instructions, he looked at Wu Tan, are you satisfied now? Wu Tan said nothing, turned around and left. Yuchen chased him out dissatisfied, wait a minute, you come as soon as you say, and leave as soon as you say, what do you think I am here? At least I can help you. When the person is found, the poor monk will come again. Wu Tan left without saying a word. Yuchen's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot, but there was nothing he could do. Asterisk. Shen Chuwei was already 3 in the morning when she woke up. If she hadn't been so hungry, she might still be able to sleep. The palace maid heard the commotion and wanted to come in to help change clothes, but Shen Chuwei refused. After washing up, Shen Chuwei came out of the bedroom. Breakfast was already placed on the dining table. She walked straight to the table and sat down. She looked at the table full of exquisite snacks and porridge, and she felt hungry just by looking at them. Shen Chuwei had been hungry for a long time. He couldn't wait to pick up a bun with chopsticks and put it into his mouth to take a bite. It was stuffed with meat, thin skin, and rich in soup. It tasted good. The maid walked in with small steps and reported, Princess, the Crown Prince is here. Shen Chuwei heard His Highness the Crown Prince subconsciously thinking of Xiao Jinyan, and then she remembered that this was Nanzhao Kingdom. Last night, Haoding seemed to have asked the Crown Prince to take her to familiarize herself with the environment. That arrived so fast. Palace maid. You don't even know what time it is now. As soon as Shen Chuwei took a bite of the crystal bag, he saw a man wearing a blue brocade robe walking in from the door. His features and eyes looked a bit like Haoding's. It was not difficult to guess that he was the prince. Should she get up and salute? But Haoding said that he didn't need to salute when he saw him. The prince was not as good as the emperor. Does that mean he didn't need to salute? Yuxi also learned from her father yesterday that Xiaoju was back. After so many years, everyone thought that Xiaoju was in danger, but they didn't expect that she was still alive. So after going to court, he couldn't wait to come to Sansu Palace. When he saw the girl sitting at the table having breakfast, holding a crystal bag in her hand and taking a bite, her cheeks were bulging, and her eyes were sparkling, which reminded him of her when she was a child, eating and talking, her cheeks always they are all bulging, like steamed buns. Xiaoju. Yuxi walked over with a smile and sat down at the dining table. Shen Shuwei tried her best to eat a mouthful of steamed buns, and smiled at Yuxi. "Hello, Prince." After saying that, he put the remaining half of the crystal bag into his mouth. Chatting should not affect eating. Yuxi paused, then smiled, and said, "I heard from my father that you don't remember anything in the past. Calling me the prince is too polite. You should call me brother Yuxi." Shen Shuwei drank a mouthful of porridge and said, "I'm a little uncomfortable." Yuxi said, "You'll get used to it after calling me a few times." Shen Shuwei looked at Yuxi in front of her and was really uncomfortable calling a stranger brother. She turned her eyes and smiled and said, "Then we can call each other like this when we are familiar with each other, okay?" Yuxi paused after hearing this, thinking that she had just returned and didn't remember anything in the past, so he was not in a hurry. "As long as you are happy." Shen Shuwei continued to eat the breakfast in front of her after hearing this. Yuxi looked down at her eating and didn't disturb her. After breakfast, the maid handed over mouthwash. After Shen Shuwei rinsed her mouth, she followed Yuxi out of the bedroom. Yuxi looked down at Xiaju, who was a head shorter than him, and smiled. "Xiaju, you've grown a lot taller. When you were a kid, you were only as tall as me." Yuxi gestured as he spoke. Shen Shuwei looked at the position he gestured and expressed doubt. "Is Feng Wu that short? How old are you?" Yuxi thought for a while and said, "When she was 9 years old." Shen Shuwei forgot how tall she was when she was 10 years old, and she wasn't that tall anyway. This scene happened to be seen by Yanyu, who was passing by. She stopped and looked over. She saw that the woman next to the prince looked familiar, but she didn't know where she had seen her before. The prince hasn't appointed a crown princess yet. That daughter can enter the palace. Could it be that Yuxi wants to marry her? Whose daughter is the woman next to the prince? Xuangnu stared at the woman next to the prince for a few times and shook her head. "Princess, I haven't heard of any daughter entering the palace. She looks very unfamiliar." "Go over and take a look." Yanyu walked over in small steps and greeted with a smile. "Brother Crown Prince, who is this daughter?" Yanyu said as she looked at the woman in front of her. She felt like she had seen her before, but she couldn't remember which daughter she was. Yuxi saw his sister coming and introduced with a smile, "Enyu, this is Princess Juyu, who just came back yesterday." Yanyu stared at the woman in front of her with wide eyes and looked at Yuxi in disbelief. "She is Princess Juyu?" Yuxi nodded, "Yes." Shen Shuwei was confused. "Is Princess Juyu so scary? Look how scared she is, her eyes are almost like fish eyes." Yanyu glanced at the woman in front of her suspiciously. "How is this possible? Isn't Princess Juyu dead? She might be a fake, Crown Prince, don't be fooled by her. She didn't even have a title, so why did Feng Wu have one?" Shen Shuwei blinked her beautiful big eyes a little guilty. "You are right, I am really a fake. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 558. The reason why she felt so guilty was because it was the first time she did something immoral, and it was inevitable. No matter what, she had to hold on until the Imperial Master came, otherwise they would have to look for it blindly and it would take them no time to find it. If the Imperial Master was easy to talk to, he could help Xiao Jinyan recover his memory smoothly, of course, if the Imperial Master had the ability to do so. Yuxi's eyes turned cold. "And you, speak nicely. Crown Prince, Princess Juyu has been missing for so many years." Yanyu looked at Shen Shuwei with disdain in his eyes. If she was fine, why didn't she come back for so many years? "I think she is a fake, maybe there is some conspiracy behind it." Yuxi glanced at Xiaoju and explained, "Father said she is Princess Juyu. She is. If you keep talking nonsense, be careful that father will be unhappy." After speaking, he looked at Xiaoju again and explained with a smile, "Enyu is straightforward and speaks without thinking, don't take it to heart." Shen Shuwei glanced at Ye Enyu, smiled and said, "I don't argue with children." Ye Yuxi laughed out loud when he heard it. Ye Enyu looked at Shen Shuwei, which was clearly saying that she was a child making trouble. "Since you are Princess Juyu, then bring out evidence to prove that you are Princess Juyu." In the past, many people sent fakes to the door and said they were Princess Juyu for the bounty. When Juyu just disappeared, Ye Haoding posted an imperial notice, offering a large sum of money to find her. As long as Princess Juyu was found, he would reward her with a mansion and a lifetime of happiness. After the imperial notice was posted, many people came to the door every day and said they were Princess Juyu. As a result, all of them were fake. Because there were too many people pretending to be, Ye Haoding had the imperial notice withdrawn. Ye Enyu looked at Shen Shuwei coldly. She wanted to see how the fakes could get evidence. Shen Shuwei touched her pockets with both hands, but she really didn't have any evidence. She suddenly remembered her face and smiled and said, "Maybe it's because I look like her." Ye Enyu snorted coldly, "There are so many people who look alike in the world. Do you think that if you look a little like her, you are Princess Juyu? If that's the case, those girls who look similar in the early years were all Princess Juyu, so how could you pretend to be her?" Ye Yuxi turned his head to look at Xiaoju. She did look a little like Xiaoju. If she was fake, the consequences would be very serious. Shen Shuwei looked at Ye Enyu in front of her, who was so arrogant that she wanted to drive her out of the palace. She just looked at Ye Enyu indifferently and didn't answer. Ye Enyu saw that Shen Shuwei didn't speak, so she knew that she was guilty, and her tone became more arrogant. "Why don't you speak? Are you guilty? I tell you, if you dare to pretend to be Princess Juyu, you will be sentenced to death." Shen Shuwei heard that pretending to be dead is a dead end, and she wanted to retreat a little bit because of her guilt, but she was unwilling to do so when she thought that she hadn't met the national teacher yet. Unwilling but afraid of death. Ye Enyu knew Shen Shuwei was scared when she saw her like this. She looked at Ye Yuxi, "Brother Crown Prince, you are so smart that you should have seen that she is a fake, otherwise why didn't she dare to refute?" Ye Yuxi looked at Xiaoju, and seeing that she didn't say a word, he was also a little confused. He looked at Ye Enyu and said, "Whether she is Princess Juyu, the emperor will decide for himself." Ye Enyu thought Ye Yuxi would drive the fake out, but he didn't. She looked at the fake in front of her. "You come with me to see the emperor, I want to see who gave you the courage to pretend to be Princess Juyu." Shen Shuwei. What can she say? There is no evidence to prove that she is Princess Juyu, let alone refute. Ye Haoding thinks she has lost her memory. Please do as you please. Ye Enyu was angry when he saw her indifferent look, as if he remembered Fengwu in the past, who always looked indifferent, but easily got the love of so many people. Father dotes on her and has the title Juyu, while she is just an untitled princess. There is a big difference between having a title and not having a title. Ye Yuxi did not stop his sister. He also wanted to know whether the girl in front of him was Xiaoju. If she was a fake, it would be meaningless. The three of them came to the imperial study and first went forward to greet. Ye Yuxi and Ye Enyu said in unison, "Father, Wanan." Shen Shuwei stood there straight, because Ye Haoding said that she didn't need to greet him next time. Ye Haoding was writing a memorial. When he saw them coming, he raised his head and glanced at the three people below. "Get up." Ye Enyu saw Shen Shuwei standing there straight from the corner of her eyes. She didn't even greet the father? After standing up, she asked, "Why didn't you greet the father?" Shen Shuwei felt that the princess in front of her seemed to be targeting her all the time. Could it be that Fengwu had a bad relationship with her? She looked at Ye Haoding because he didn't let her greet. Ye Haoding said sternly, "Enyu, be careful when talking to Xiaoju. I told her not to greet each other." Ye Enyu said, "Father, Princess Juyu has been missing for almost 10 years. Suddenly, someone who looks like Juyu appears. Don't you think it's suspicious? I think she deliberately pretended to be Princess Juyu to cheat for wealth and glory. Shen Shuwei. I'm really not interested in your wealth and glory. My husband is the prince. Ye Haoding naturally thought about this problem. He looked at the face that looked like Xiaju. He smiled and said, Kiu can't recognize the wrong master. She sent Kiu back yesterday. Shen Shuwei suddenly thought of that silly bird. It turned out that Ye Haoding thought she was Feng Wuyu not only because of the similar appearance, but also because of that silly bird. But Ye Haoding didn't know that she was born with a better animal affinity. Father, Iroha is just a bird. If the trainer uses some tricks, it is still possible to deceive a bird. Ye Enyu said and looked at Shen Shuwei, if she is the princess of Juyu, my father can test her about Juyu. Shen Shuwei. Look, this princess probably has a grudge against Feng Wuyu, otherwise why would she target her everywhere? Ye Haoding said, she doesn't remember what happened before. Ye Enyu sneered secretly. No wonder she had been silent just now. It turned out that she was pretending to have amnesia. Then it's even more suspicious. If I don't remember a word of it, it saves me a lot of trouble. Ye Haoding pondered for a moment and asked, Xiaju, if you forget what happened in the past, how do you remember that your name is Xiaju? I often have a dream. In the dream, someone always calls me Xiaju. It sounds nice and smooth, so I use Xiaju as my nickname. Shen Shuwei answered neither humble nor arrogantly, because what she said was true. When Xiao Jinyan asked her nickname, she thought of Xiaju. When Ye Enyu heard this, she knew she was lying. Who would believe this reason? Father, she is obviously lying. She must have known in advance that Princess Juyu's nickname is Xiaju, so she made up a reason for her dream. Shen Shuwei was a little helpless. No one believed the truth these days. I didn't lie. If it hadn't been for that dream, I wouldn't have used Xiaju as my nickname. Ye Haoding smiled and nodded when he heard this, I believe in you alone. Ye Enyu couldn't help but become anxious, Father, how come you believe what she says so easily? If she harbors evil intentions and does something harmful to Nanzao Kingdom, it will be too late by then. Seeing that his sister was still insisting, Ye Yuxi said, Enyu, you always say that Xiaju is a fake. Do you have any evidence to prove it? Ye Enyu glanced at Shen Shuwei and snorted, of course. Ye Yuxi asked, what evidence do you have? Shen Shuwei glanced at Ye Enyu secretly, looking confident. This princess really had a fight with her. She secretly prayed in her heart, asking for the koi to possess her. She didn't really want to take over Feng Wuyu's identity, just let her hold on until the national master came. Ye Enyu looked at Ye Haoding and said, Father, isn't there a tiger and lion in the zoo? The tiger and lion were raised by Princess Juyu since they were young, and they are only close to Princess Juyu. If the tigress can be obedient, it will prove that she is the princess of Juyu. It was at this time that Ye Haoding remembered the tiger-lion beast that Xiaju had brought back when he went out with the imperial master. It had been fierce as a child and became even more ferocious as an adult. No one dared to approach him. After Xiaoju disappeared, he was afraid that the tiger-lion beast would hurt people and put it into the zoo. Father, what you said makes some sense. If she is really Xiaoju, the tiger, lion, and beast should listen to her. However, if she is not, her life will be in danger, Ye Yuxi said with some worry. Look at Shen Shuwei. Shen Shuwei glanced at Ye Enyu, wishing that Feng Wuyu had not sent her to die. Moreover, even though they had been raised since childhood, they had been separated for almost 10 years, so there was no guarantee that Tigress would remember its original owner. Although she has a golden finger, she just doesn't know what kind of beast Tigan is. If it is the same as Tigress, she doesn't have to worry. Ye Haoding pondered for a moment. Yesterday, he concluded that Ki was Xiaju based on her identity and her similarity. It was too arbitrary. He raised his eyes and looked at Shen Shuwei and said, "In order to prove that you are Xiaju, I can only let you take the risk and try it." Shen Chu slightly glanced at the three people in front of her. The questioning and expectant eyes made her unable to decide whether she wanted to or not. In order to save her life, she had to discuss it in advance. "Just try it, if it doesn't work, you have to save me, I'm afraid of death." Yahouding smiled when he heard this. "Don't worry, I won't let anything happen to you." Shen Chu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. "That's good." The zoo is in the northwest corner of the palace, which is the most spacious area, but it took a lot of time to walk from the imperial study to the zoo. After walking for so long, Shen Shuwei felt that all the meals she had eaten for breakfast had been digested because she was hungry for food. There were guards guarding the entrance to the zoo. When the emperor came in person, the guards knelt down to greet him. The man in charge of the zoo was a middle-aged captain of the guard who was about 40 years old. He stepped forward a few steps and saluted, "Long live the emperor, long live the emperor." Yahouding asked, "How is the tigress doing now?" The captain of the guard felt a little guilty. He didn't expect that the emperor would suddenly visit and ask to see the tiger, lion, and tiger by name. Back to the emperor, "It's been hot these past 2 days, and the tigress is not in good condition." Yahouding frowned, "Is tigress sick?" The captain of the guard wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and replied cautiously, "I haven't eaten in the past 2 days." Yahouding frowned even more when he heard this. "Go in and take a look." Here the guard led the way. Shen Shuwei followed leisurely, looking around the zoo and found that there were not only tigers and lions, but also wolves and other wild animals. What was the purpose of raising wild animals in the palace? If you accidentally run out, why don't you finish the game? At this moment, the lions and tigers who were inside the beast suddenly came out and looked out from the cage. The captain of the guard saw it and said with a smile on his face, "Because of the emperor's arrival, the beasts are particularly excited today." Yahouding glanced at the beasts in the cage and ignored them. He came to the zoo today mainly to verify the authenticity of Xiaoju. Shen Shuwei looked at those glowing eyes and could probably understand their mood at the moment, which was excitement. After walking for about a cup of tea, we arrived at the innermost part of the zoo. In front of us was the largest beast cage we had walked along the way. In the beast cage, a huge beast was lying in the corner. Its snow-white fur would easily be mistaken for a small snow mountain if it were not winter, mainly because it was too big. Yahouding glanced at the tiger-lion beast. He had not seen it for a long time and found that the tiger-lion beast was not as fierce and energetic as before, but this did not affect the proof of the real Xiaju. He looked at Shen Shuwei. "Xiaju, this is the tiger-lion beast." Yanyu looked at Shen Shuwei proudly. She wanted to see what the counterfeit would do next. Shen Shuwei retracted her gaze and looked at Yahouding. "Okay." When Shen Shuwei walked to the beast cage, the chief guard took out the key from his waist. When he was about to unlock it, the huge beast inside suddenly moved, and the chief guard's hand trembled. The huge beast supported the ground with its 2 forelimbs, shook the hair on its body, and turned its head to look over. Shen Shuwei looked at the tiger-lion beast. Even the hair on its neck was white, snow-white, and it felt whiter than the snowball, because there were a few strands of silver hair on its head. Its eyes were as big as copper bells, staring at her without blinking. The tiger-lion beast, which was originally lying on its back, suddenly stood up, and people could clearly see its height. It was 1 section taller than the tiger, and it was about the size of 2 tigers. Looking at its strong limbs, it felt like it could kill her with 1 palm. The chief guard opened the lock tremblingly, and then said to Shen Shuwei, "You can go in." Shen Shuwei hesitated for a while and walked in. As soon as she entered, the chief guard locked the door, fearing that the tiger-lion beast would suddenly rush out. After Shen Shuwei entered, she stood there without moving, just quietly looking at the tiger-lion beast, and finally looked at the pair of copper bell-sized eyes. The tiger-lion beast stared at Shen Shuwei for a long time, then suddenly raised its head and roared, revealing sharp fangs when it opened its mouth, which were sharp weapons for tearing prey. The sound was deafening, as if it was afraid that others could not hear it. Shen Shuwei covered her ears, fearing that her ears would be deafened. Yahouding frowned and looked at the reaction of the tiger-lion beast, feeling a little more excited than when he first came. Yanyu saw the scene and looked at Shen Shuwei in the cage. The tiger-lion beast was the most ferocious beast. At present, Nanzao Kingdom only had this one, and the counterfeit was dead this time. After the tiger-lion beast roared, its strong forelimbs kicked the ground, raising a cloud of dust. Shen Shuwei hurriedly covered her mouth and nose, and couldn't help coughing twice because of the dust. The tiger-lion beast seemed to have kicked enough, and walked towards Shen Shuwei with its strong limbs. Its powerful aura was no less than Mount Tai. This was the first time Shen Shuwei had seen a tiger-lion beast since she was a child. It was taller than her. Seeing the huge head approaching, she instinctively turned her head and saw Yanyu looking at her with a smile on her face. Yanyu stood next to the beast cage, watching how Shen Shuwei was frightened by the tiger-lion beast and was slapped away by the tiger-lion beast like watching a play. Good night. Please support with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 559. Since she met Yanyu, she has been targeting herself. No, it should be Fengwu, and I don't know how much hatred and resentment there is between them. Otherwise, why would they question and target each other as soon as they meet? Just when Shen Shuwei was angry about the feud between them, her cheeks felt hot, and she looked away and saw the tiger-lion beast licking her face. Shen Shuwei was petrified on the spot. The first thing she thought of was, did you brush your teeth? You licked it with your mouth open? Tiger-lion beasts are carnivores, and if they don't brush their teeth or rinse their mouths, you can imagine what the mouth tastes like in the long run. After reacting, Shen Shuwei took out a handkerchief. No, it was a disinfectant tissue, and she kept a pack in her sleeve pocket every day. She took out a disinfectant tissue and wiped the place licked by the tiger-lion beast. But just as she wiped it clean, the tiger-lion beast came over again and licked it, and licked the original position. Shen Shuwei's hand stopped in mid-air, looking at the huge face close at hand. The long hair poked her face from time to time because of the tiger-lion beast's movements. The beast's hair was not as soft as Sichuan's hair, so there was a slight stinging feeling. She found that the tiger-lion beast was staring at her, and from its eyes, it could be seen that it had no ill intentions. Just when she was about to communicate with the tiger-lion beast, the huge head moved again, opened its mouth and licked again. Can I not lick it? Outside the cage, several pairs of eyes stared at the tiger-lion beast and Shen Shuwei inside, expecting and holding their breath nervously, because they knew the tiger-lion beast too well and it was extremely ferocious. Once, in order to verify the ability of the tiger-lion beast, Yahouding put 3 tigers, 4 leopards, and 3 lions together with the tiger-lion beast. It turned out that these 10 beasts did not dare to move when they saw the tiger-lion beast, and the tiger-lion beast lazily lay in the corner, leisurely and contented, and did not take them seriously. Yahouding didn't know what the tiger-lion beast meant by this action, but it was obvious that the tiger-lion beast was interested in her and was looking forward to its next move. Yanyu kept staring at the tiger-lion beast, expecting it to show its power and scare the fake to death. She just heard the chief guard say that the tiger-lion beast had not eaten for 2 days, and it must be extremely hungry now. Wild beasts will eat anything when they are hungry. Now seeing the tiger-lion beast open its mouth to lick Shen Shuwei, it is probably thinking about tasting the taste. Just when the tiger-lion beast opened its mouth to lick again, Shen Shuwei finally couldn't help but stretched out her hand to press the tiger-lion beast's nose to stop it from opening its mouth. She tried to tell the tiger-lion beast with her eyes, "Don't lick." The tiger-lion beast silently closed its mouth, nudged Shen Shuwei's palm with its nose, and couldn't help opening its mouth again to lick. Shen Shuwei hurriedly pulled back her hand when she saw this. He actually wanted to lick her hand? The tiger-lion beast pounced on nothing, licked its mouth, and stared at Shen Shuwei with eyes as big as copper bells. It was such a ferocious behemoth, but Shen Shuwei actually saw it feeling wronged. She should be the one feeling wronged, okay. At this moment, the tiger-lion beast took a step forward. It seemed like just one step, but for Shen Shuwei, it was a big step, and it pushed her directly to the edge of the cage. She looked at the tiger-lion beast that came closer again, and resisted the urge to roll her eyes, saying, "No licking." The tiger-lion beast paused and hummed, and the hot air rushed directly to Shen Shuwei's cheek, and the broken hair on her forehead also swayed with it. She knew that the tiger-lion beast was angry. When a beast is angry, it is natural to stroke its fur. Shen Shuwei looked at the tiger-lion beast that was still humming, and reached out to touch its head, but because of her height, her hand could not reach the top of the tiger-lion beast's head because it was looking up. She had to tiptoe, and found that she still couldn't reach it. Just when she was about to give up, the tiger-lion beast suddenly lowered its head. Shen Shuwei found that the tiger-lion beast was actually a little cute. The tiger-lion beast lowered its head, so it was much easier to touch its head. She rubbed its huge head, and then continued to stroke its fur. After a while, the tiger-lion beast stopped humming. Shen Shuwei stared at the tiger-lion beast for a while. The hair on its body was too long. Who knows how long it has not been trimmed. The originally snow-white hair looked dirty. At this moment, a huge claw was raised and stretched towards Shen Shuwei. The people outside the cage held their breath again, staring at the tiger-lion beast without blinking, wanting to see what it would do next. Before, there was a guard who was delivering food. He was slapped away by the tiger-lion beast, and several ribs were broken. The whole person was useless. Yahouding looked at the chief guard and signaled him to prepare anesthetics. The chief guard nodded and asked the subordinates in the distance to prepare to draw the bow and arrow, and the arrow was coated with anesthetics. Yanyu was a little excited. The tiger-lion beast finally couldn't hold back and was about to attack. She secretly urged the tiger-lion beast in her heart, "Hurry up, slap her away with the palm." Shen Shuwei felt a huge claw hugging her waist. She instinctively hugged the claw to avoid being slapped away. As a result, she found that the tiger-lion beast just gently pushed her behind him. Shen Shuwei's back was against the stone wall. The stone wall was smooth and not painful. She looked at the tiger-lion beast's movements in confusion. The tiger-lion beast shook its hair and roared to the sky again. Everyone present was frightened by the roar and instinctively stepped back. Yanyu's face turned pale and she hurriedly stepped back. At this moment, the tiger-lion beast suddenly ran quickly and rushed towards the cage. There was a loud bang and the door of the cage was thrown out, hitting Yanyu's leg. "Ah!" Yanyu cried out in pain and fell to the ground. Then, there was another loud bang sound, a hole was opened in the animal cage, and the cage made of iron was bent out of shape. After the guard was frightened, he remembered to use anesthetic and shot the bow and arrow into the body of the tiger and lion. The tiger roared, shook its body, and the two arrow feathers fell down. The guards were horrified and were stunned for a while before they remembered to continue using the anesthetic. Yahouding also didn't expect that the tiger would suddenly go crazy even though its arrow feathers were useless. This showed how thick the tiger's fur was. It was no wonder that it had to be afraid of lions, tigers, and other beasts. Yuxi was also startled. When he saw his sister falling, he took his guards to help Yanyu up. Yanyu was in so much pain that she couldn't care less about Shen Shuwei. She cried and looked at Yuxi, "Brother Prince, my legs hurt so much." This scene happened so fast that Shen Shuwei was shocked on the spot. The tiger-lion beast was so powerful. The iron cage collapsed after 2 hits. Shen Shuwei was still in shock. Tigress snorted and made room. He turned to look at Shen Shuwei and motioned for her to get out. Shen Shuwei looked at such a big hole, and when he looked at the tiger, he saw that it was raising its long beard, looking triumphant. Tigress thought she was locked up, so he got angry and broke the cage. Shen Chu was secretly glad that he had such a golden finger, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous. She had just seen that bows and arrows were useless against tigers, lions, and tigers. Naturally, her silver needles were also useless, and she had no ability to protect herself in an accident. Shen Shuwei walked out of the animal cage under the gaze of the tigress. When he came out, he found that Ye Haoding and the others who were standing nearby were now standing looking at them from a distance. After waiting for Shen Shuwei to come out, Tigress also came out of the cage and stood next to Shen Shuwei. The difference in size was immediately apparent. Ye Enyu burst into tears in pain. When she saw Shen Shuwei come out safe and sound, she looked in disbelief. How could this be possible? Ye Haoding saw Shen Shuwei walking out unharmed, and the tiger was right next to her. Just like when Xiaoju was a child, the tiger would stay quietly by her side. At that time, tiger was still a cub, not so tall, and looked a little cute. This is also the first time he has seen the power of the tiger. Such an indestructible cage is nothing in front of the tiger, it only depends on whether it thinks about it or not. After the tigress calmed down, Ye Haoding strode over. When he walked in front of her, Ye Haoding smiled twice and said, "Xiaoju, the tiger, lion and beast still only listen to your words." Shen Chu raised her head slightly and looked at the tiger, and found that the tiger was looking down at her. She looked back at Ye Haoding with a guilty conscience. If he had known that he was born with this ability, he probably wouldn't have said that. The tiger looks a bit fierce, but it's actually quite cute. This is her truest evaluation of the tiger. Ye Haoding glanced at the big hole in the animal cage, and then looked at the ferocious look of the tiger and lion beast. Is this cute? The corners of his mouth twitched violently. It's a bit cute. Ye Haoding said something against his will. Shen Shuwei heard Ye Haoding's tone and no longer doubted whether she was genuine or not. She glanced at the tiger and reminded, "The tiger is hungry, prepare some food for it." "That's no problem," Ye Haoding ordered the captain of the guard, "Go and prepare food for the tiger, lion, and lion." Here the captain of the guard was so frightened that his legs became weak and he couldn't control his legs when he walked. After the matter was resolved, Shen Shuwei followed Ye Haoding and left the zoo. Ye Enyu was sent to see the imperial doctor by Ye Yuxi 1 step ahead of schedule, and she left unwillingly. Shen Shuwei had just taken a few steps when he heard heavy footsteps behind him, one sound heavier than the other. She had a bad feeling. When she turned around, she saw the tiger slowly following behind her. She could also see its tail wagging behind it, like a puppy. Does it want to follow her and leave? Ye Haoding also looked back at the tiger and followed closely behind Xiaoju. This posture clearly meant that he wanted to follow Xiaoju. He smiled and said, "After all these years, Tigress still likes to stick to you." Shen Chu smiled guiltily. The tigress had been locked up for too long, which made it too lonely. It was rare to meet someone who could understand it, so naturally it wanted to get closer. Ye Haoding glanced at the tiger that followed and stopped, and asked her, "Let it follow." Shen Chu glanced at the tiger and lion beast slightly. "If we don't let it follow, I'm afraid it will lift the roof." When Ye Haoding heard this, he didn't think she was exaggerating at all. He could tell just by looking at the hole in the animal cage. If he didn't let it follow him, he might go crazy. However, in the past, Tigress was not that big and it was easy to follow. Now it is so big that whether you can pass through the moon cave gate is a problem. But if the tigress wants to follow, he can only let it follow. From the zoo to the Wushao Palace, when she passed through the first moon cave gate, Shen Shuwei looked back at the tiger and lion beast, only to see it slowly walking over with its head lowered and its huge body shrunken, which reminded her inexplicably of the time when she was a child, crawling into a dog hole. Screen. When the palace maids and eunuchs saw the tiger, lion, and beast, they all took a detour with frightened faces. When they arrived at Wushao Palace, Shen Shuwei went in and looked back at the tiger and lion beast again. She saw that it was just like before, with its head lowered and its body shrunken. She couldn't help but laugh. After Tigris came in, he shook his strong body. His hair was long enough to be braided. Shen Shuwei looked at the long hair and decided to either shave it or braid it later. When crossing the stone arch bridge, Shen Shuwei looked back at the tiger-lion beast. The stone arch bridge was not wide, and there was no problem for 3 people to walk side by side. However, the tiger-lion beast was huge, and the bridge looked very narrow in its eyes, so it was naturally a little restrained when walking. It felt like a person walking on a single plank bridge, swaying over. Shen Shuwei looked at it without laughing, but when the tiger-lion beast raised its head and looked embarrassed, she couldn't help laughing out loud. The tiger-lion beast came down from the arch bridge and saw Shen Shu smiling so happily, it lowered its head and rubbed her arm. In Shen Shuwei's eyes, it seemed a little embarrassed to be a spoiled child. At this time, the chief guard brought a pile of meat with people, and it was cooked meat. The tiger-lion beast was indeed hungry, and when he saw the meat, he walked over. The chief guard and the other 2 guards were frightened and hurriedly stepped back. The tiger-lion beast ignored them and lowered its head to start eating the meat. Shen Shuwei watched with her own eyes as the tiger-lion beast put a large bowl of meat into its mouth, and then lay there with its mouth open. Just when she was wondering about the behavior of the tiger-lion beast, she saw the guards holding a paddle and a brush, trembling and coming over, and then trembling and starting to brush the tiger-lion beast's teeth. Usually, the tiger-lion beast is in a cage, so they are not so afraid when cleaning their teeth. This time, there is nothing to stop it. If the tiger-lion beast goes crazy, it will be disabled if not dead. Shen Shuwei was shocked. The tiger-lion beast not only eats cooked meat, but also needs to brush its teeth. Thinking of being licked by the tiger-lion beast several times in the zoo just now, and being rejected by her several times, it seems that the tiger-lion beast is still a tiger-lion beast with mysophobia. After the guards washed their teeth and saluted Shen Shuwei, they hurried away with the paddle. The tiger-lion beast stood up and walked towards Shen Shuwei, shaking its tail. The hair around its mouth was wet after it had just washed its teeth, and it stretched its head over without warning. That action was obvious, he wanted her to wipe its mouth. "You're so big, and you still think you're a baby." Shen Shuwei said this, but she took out a towel and wiped the water stains on its mouth. While wiping the water stains, she looked at the tiger-lion beast and found that it was a bit like Sichuan, both of them were very spiritual. She was a little curious, would the tiger-lion beast also mistake her for Fengwu? Sichuan woke up from a nap and didn't see Shen Shuwei, so he ran all the way out. When he saw Shen Shuwei, he ran over quickly, mainly because he was hungry and wanted to find Shen Shuwei to prepare food for him. Suddenly seeing a huge monster, Sichuan hurriedly stopped his feet, but he still couldn't stop and bumped into the tiger-lion beast's strong forelimbs. Now update 1 chapter every day, 1 chapter of 4,000 words. If there are many monthly tickets, 20,000 words will be updated. If you climb to the top of the monthly ticket list, 30,000 words will be updated. Good night. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 560. Chapter 560 Jealousy, come to find your sister. After the collision, Sichuan's head was full of stars. It took him a long time to react. He looked up at the huge monster in front of him, but he could only see gray hair and couldn't even see the other person's face. Sichuan turned around and ran to Shen Shui's feet. He looked up again at the huge monster in front of him. When he saw the face, he found that it was a familiar face. He hadn't seen it for so many years. It seemed that he had grown so big by eating feed. Tiger Lion Beast also looked down at this time and saw the snow-white ball. He also recognized it as Sichuan at a glance. However, it was so small in front of it N years ago, and it is still so small now. It stretched out its claws and pushed Sichuan, as if to say hello. But in Shen Shui's eyes, the scene was a bit like a cat teasing a mouse. Sichuan snorted, turned around and hugged Shen Shui's thigh, one to seek comfort, and the other to hug. Shen Shui saw Sichuan hugging her thigh aggrievedly, and couldn't help laughing out loud. But she still bent down and picked up Sichuan. Sichuan raised her chin to look at the tiger lion beast, obviously showing off. Her eyes seemed to say, "Xiaju hugged me, not you, humph." The tiger lion beast saw it, humphed, and took a step forward to lean on Shen Shui. Shen Shui looked at the tiger lion beast's actions with a confused face. What does it want to do with such a big body leaning over? Do you want to crush me into a meat pie? The tiger lion beast wanted Shen Shui to hug it, and it also realized that it was too big and she couldn't hug it at all, and it was a little distressed. Sichuan called out proudly, "Meow, you can't enjoy this kind of treatment." The tiger lion beast bared its teeth at Sichuan, raised its claws and began to pull her arms, trying to get Sichuan off. No matter how strong Shen Shui was, she couldn't compare to the tiger lion beast, and she got the snowball in her arms off in a few moves. Sichuan was angry and wanted to scratch the tiger lion beast, but was easily pushed away by the tiger lion beast. Sichuan's round body rolled on the ground for several rounds before stopping. Sichuan glared at the tiger lion beast angrily. Shen Shui looked at the two, one big and one small, with a confused look on her face. At this time, the palace maid came over with the fish, and was also shocked when she saw the tiger lion beast. She trembled and said, "Princess, the fish is steamed." Shen Shui saw the fish and finally had something to separate them. "Sichuan, go eat the fish." Sichuan had been hungry for a long time, and she became even hungrier when she smelled the fishy smell. She ignored the tiger lion beast and turned her head to face the tiger lion beast with her butt, and then walked gracefully to eat the fish. The tiger lion beast was full and didn't care about the fish. It was not enough to fill the gap between its teeth. Shen Shui looked at the tiger lion beast and decided to shave its hair, no, to cut its hair. Wu's palace was very large. She found a large open space and prepared scissors. The tiger lion beast followed her all the time, without her command. When Shen Shui looked at the tiger lion beast, she thought of Dabai at home. Susu called Dabai Huhu, and she also called out, "Huhu, come, lie on the ground." The tiger lion beast didn't know what Shen Shui was going to do, but still lay on the ground obediently, looking at her with his eyes open. "Good boy, don't move." Shen Shui praised him, picked up the scissors, looked at the tiger lion beast's hair, and then began to trim from the back. The tiger lion beast didn't dare to move, but just turned his eyes and looked at Shen Shui, his eyes full of curiosity. Asterisk. Xiao Jinyan didn't sleep well last night, always afraid that Shen Shui would get into trouble in the palace, and he was not around. He came out of the guest room with dark circles under his eyes, and saw Wu Tan coming up from downstairs, and saw that Wu Tan also had dark circles under his eyes. When the two met and saw each other's dark circles, they knew what was going on. When Xiao Jinyan came back last night, he asked Qin Xiao to find Wu Tan and tell him that Shen Shui had been found, but Qin Xiao went there several times and he was not in the guest room. He also thought of telling him because Wu Tan had been looking for Shen Shui with him. "Did you just come back?" Wu Tan nodded, "Yes." Xiao Jinyan said, "She has been found." Wu Tan's cold eyes suddenly became nervous, Where is she? Xiao Jinyan chuckled, you are a monk, aren't you free from all four elements? Why are you so nervous about her? Wu Tan said calmly, Mr. Xiao, a monk's freedom from all four elements does not mean that there is no friendship. What's wrong with me worrying about my friends? Xiao Jinyan put away his smile and his voice became cold, it's better this way. Xiao Jinyan went downstairs after he finished speaking. Wu Tan watched Xiao Jinyan go downstairs and did not tell him where Shen Shuwei was. He retracted his gaze and returned to his guest room. Beijing. Jun Wuxian had been preparing for the engagement for quite a while, mainly because he did not understand the customs here. Today is an important day for marriage proposals. The general's mansion is decorated with lights and red lanterns, and a group of people gathered at the door to watch the excitement. There are also a group of children playing and laughing, clamoring for wedding candy. The news that General Su's daughter is getting engaged today has spread throughout the capital yesterday. In recent days, the news of Su Qingqing's disfigurement has spread all over the streets and alleys, and everyone knows it. The people watching the excitement at the door all rushed over after hearing the news, curious about which young man fell in love with the disfigured Su daughter. Why haven't I heard of any young man coming to propose marriage, but suddenly they have made an engagement? I haven't heard of it either. Before Su Qingqing was disfigured, she was very picky when she went on blind dates. After she was disfigured, others looked down on her. The rich and powerful families must have looked down on her. I guess she is marrying down, and she is attracted by General Su's power and wants to rise to the top. I think so too. I'll know what the other party's family background is after I see the betrothal gifts. Look, people are coming, someone in the crowd shouted. The crowd looked over and saw a large group of people carrying betrothal gifts. When they got closer, everyone's attention was attracted by the man in the lead. The man in the lead was wearing a dark purple brocade robe with gold weaving, a jade crown and a slender figure. His handsome features attracted everyone's attention. Wouldn't the man in front be General Su's future son-in-law? This man has a noble temperament and doesn't look like a son of an ordinary family. He looks so outstanding, how could he fall in love with the disfigured Miss Su? That's right, this man is either rich or noble, he won't fall in love with the disfigured Miss Su. Today is the big day for the young lady to be engaged. Caixia happily brought out the wedding candy and distributed it to the children and onlookers. As a result, she heard someone in the crowd talking about her young lady. As a close maid, she saw everything that Su Qingqing experienced during her time from leaving the palace to her disfigurement. Today is a big day, and people are still talking at the door. Caixia can't help it. She walked to the crowd who were still talking with wedding candy and said, "Would you like to eat wedding candy?" The crowd was in high spirits. Seeing Caixia offering wedding candy, they naturally wanted to eat some wedding candy and share in the joy. Just as they reached into the plate, Caixia smiled and moved the plate away, and several hands were empty. Just as they were puzzled, Caixia continued with a smile, "You are so busy chatting, I guess you don't have the time to eat wedding candy." The crowd looked at each other. One of the crowd couldn't help asking, "What do you mean?" Caixia snorted, "You talk about my lady behind my back, and you still want to eat wedding candy? Can wedding candy shut your mouth?" The people who were talking excitedly just now were scolded by Caixia, and they were embarrassed. Caixia pointed at the future son-in-law and said, "Do you see that handsome and elegant young man? He is the future son-in-law who will be engaged to my young lady today." The onlookers dropped their jaws when they heard this. Caixia pointed at the betrothal gifts and said, "Do you see those big and small boxes of betrothal gifts? They are all prepared by the future son-in-law himself." The onlookers looked at the betrothal gifts involuntarily. As onlookers, they have naturally seen many betrothal scenes of famous families betrothing each other. Those betrothal gifts are what ordinary people dare not think of. And the betrothal gifts in front of them are more than they have seen before. At a glance, you can tell that it will cost a lot of money. Caixia looked at them with surprise, and then she withdrew her eyes with satisfaction, holding the wedding candy and continuing to distribute wedding candy. Su Qingqing was sitting in the boudoir at this time. Today was a big day. She was dressed very gently and generously, with a plain veil on her cheeks, revealing only a pair of watery almond eyes. A few days ago, Su Qingqing was a little depressed, with a look of frustration all day long. It is said that people feel refreshed when they are happy. Su Qingqing is more beautiful than before, not to mention her spirit, and her eyebrows and eyes are filled with a faint smile. After Caixia distributed the wedding candy, she returned to the inner courtyard. Miss, Mr. Jun is here. Caixia's voice came before she arrived. Su Qingqing looked up at the door and saw a green figure running in, with a smile on his chubby face. In fact, Jun Wuxian has been living in the general's mansion, and it is not so troublesome to be engaged, but Jun Wuxian insisted on doing this. He said that only in this way would the whole capital know that the general's mansion's daughter Su was engaged to him. Miss, it's so lively today, so many people come to watch the fun. Caixia smiled and began to check Su Qingqing's makeup. Even if Su Qingqing didn't go out, she guessed that as a disfigured daughter, there must be a lot of people watching the fun. Is there anyone who is talking about me behind my back? How can someone like me when I am so ugly? Caixia paused. She didn't want to say these things to avoid spoiling the young lady's fun, but she didn't expect that the young lady knew about it. She comforted her, young lady, don't care what others say. Today is a big day, and you should be happy. Su Qingqing said indifferently, why do I care about them? What I care about is that the person who wants to marry me is Jun Wuxian. Just based on this, I can be happy for a long time. Caixia asked with a smile, why didn't I see that the young lady likes Jun Gongzi so much before? I don't even know how the young lady knows Jun Gongzi. Su Qingqing remembered that she was held hostage when she first met Jun Wuxian. She was scared to death at that time, and Jun Wuxian was wearing a nightgown, which looked like an assassin in her eyes. But after getting along for a long time, you will find that he is actually a good person. Jun Wuxian and I have known each other for several years, but he always comes at night, so you didn't see him. A few years ago, when she was still in the palace, the young lady knew Jun Gongzi. The key is that she, a close maid, didn't even know. And it was at night, isn't that a secret meeting? However, although the young lady used to be spoiled, she was not reckless, otherwise she would not have been out of the palace for so long before she confirmed her feelings with Mr. Jun. The engagement had been settled during this period of time, and General Su came back from another place for this purpose. Today, it was just a formality to let everyone know that Miss Su was engaged. As for the wedding date, it was also agreed to be at the end of the year. Su Qingqing couldn't sit still in the boudoir, so she stood up and walked out with her skirt lifted. Caixia followed behind her, covering her mouth and laughing, Miss, why are you in such a hurry? Su Qingqing naturally knew that Caixia was asking knowingly, so she said coquettishly, I'm not in a hurry. It's too stuffy in the room. I'll go out for some fresh air. Caixia didn't point it out, and came out with the washed fruit, Miss, have some fruit. Su Qingqing saw that Jun Wuxian hadn't come yet, so she retracted her gaze to the fruit on the plate, picked up the grapes and put them into her mouth to eat. She didn't think her veil was in the way, so she pulled it off. Caixia saw Jun Wuxian coming from a distance, and smiled and reminded him, Miss, the future son-in-law is here. Su Qingqing had just stuffed a grape into her mouth, and when she heard it, she raised her head and saw Jun Wuxian walking towards her. She hurriedly ate the grape in her mouth, then took out a handkerchief to wipe her mouth. In just a moment, Jun Wuxian had already walked closer. Su Qingqing looked up at the handsome man in front of her. After being together for so long, they were familiar with each other, but when she thought about the engagement today and the relationship between them as an engaged couple, she couldn't help but feel shy. Junwoo put away his folding fan and looked Su Qingqing up and down. Today, she was dressed very gracefully, which was very different from usual. Su Qingqing found that Junwoo had been looking at her. She looked down at her clothes and asked him in confusion, "Why are you staring at me?" Junwoo laughed softly, "You are too gentle and dignified today. It's a bit unlike you." When Caixia was dressing up, Su Qingqing had been looking at her makeup. She thought it was pretty good, but a little restrained. It's just that during this period, her mother kept nagging her every day, asking her to learn to take care of her husband and children, be gentle and generous, and so on. Her ears are almost calloused. "Is it not good for me to be like this?" Junwoo said, "Just be yourself." Su Qingqing felt a little happy, "Then I'll listen to you." Caixia consciously put down the plate and retreated. Junwoo sat down on the chair, picked up the grapes and threw them into his mouth accurately, but his eyes were looking at Su Qingqing. "We will set out to find Shen Shuwei tomorrow." Su Qingqing looked at Junwoo's actions. Whether it was his appearance or his behavior, he didn't look like a 30-year-old uncle at all. It's not that he is immature and steady, but he is really young and energetic, unlike his elder brother, who has a gloomy face and pretends to be steady. "Okay, I can't wait to see her." Junwoo stared at Su Qingqing for a long time, reached out and held her hand, and with a little force, he was in his arms. Su Qingqing was startled by the sudden action. She put her hands on Junwoo's chest. When she raised her head to meet those auspicious phoenix eyes, her heart was like a deer beating, and a touch of red appeared on her cheeks. Junwoo looked at her blushing cheeks, and touched them with his slender fingers, with a faint smile on his lips.